We'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
President Biden promises to keep the peace as he touches down in Belfast.
A very good morning to you at 6 o'clock on Wednesday, the 12th of April. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Leading the news on this Wednesday morning, the US President has pledged to make sure the Good Friday Agreement and the Windsor Framework stay in place as he prepares for historic talks today aimed at restoring power sharing.
Last night, he was met at the steps of Air Force One by the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak ahead of a bilateral meeting between the two leaders today.
The Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, is in Washington to meet with world leaders. This is in a bid to avoid a new global financial crisis. It comes as the latest IMF forecast suggests the UK is ready to be the worst performing G7 economy this year.
Downing Street's ruled out talks with junior doctors unless they drop their calls for a 35% pay rise, calling the demand unreasonable. It comes amid reports the co-chair of the British Medical Association's on holiday whilst the walkouts are taking place.
And the King's coronation plans are in chaos due to a string of last-minute problems. With just over 3 weeks until the ceremony, insiders say that amongst the issues are an unfinished seating plan due to Harry and Meghan still not confirming their attendance. Well, that's a problem easily put right, isn't it?
Also, that's only 2 seats. I can't believe that that's the reason there's chaos behind the scenes.
Neither can I.
High-pressure moment, once in a lifetime. I'm sure it's perfectly normal to have a bit of pre-match nerves.
Yeah, it's like if you were planning a wedding or something like that. There's always,
tensions.
So get in touch if you had pre-match nerves and your views on today's stories that we're talking about. Get in touch the usual way, gbnews@gbnews.uk. That could become
a jingle.
Musical jingle, couldn't it? GB News, GB News,
And he's off.
Anyway, okay. OK, so the President of the United States has vowed to keep the peace. He's touched down in Belfast today, a day of diplomatic talks.
He was greeted last night on the steps of Air Force One by the Prime Minister, who he'll hold bilateral talks with later today.
The President will also visit the University of Ulster to deliver a short speech before heading to the Republic of Ireland.
Well, his visit comes amid continuing security concerns, with 4 suspected pipe bombs being found in a cemetery in Derry, Londonderry, yesterday.
joining us now for more on this. Let's go to our Northern Ireland reporter, Dougie Beattie. So he got in last night, and was it straight to work then, Dougie? What happened?
Well, it seems to be. The great and good met him at the airport, and that security operation that was going on from about 9 o'clock yesterday morning, as you can see behind me, well, it sprang into life and roads closed as that cavalcade made its way down through Northern Ireland's fine roads to Belfast city centre, and it's here in the centre that he is currently residing. And this security operation is some operation, £7 million worth Operation Rigoletto. That comes out of the PSNI's budget, but it is impressive, actually. These crash barriers and stuff you see behind me are all moved in here. There's nothing going to ram here. Over on the other side of me is tents. You get check going through there. There's even x-ray machines to x-ray to make sure you're carrying nothing you shouldn't be on the way through. But this morning, even people trying to get through to their work, because this street runs right down the side of the BBC here in Northern Ireland, right down to the back of the City Hall. And yes, many people, even at this time of the morning, trying to get to work are being stopped on the way through. But you said that he's having those talks. It was interesting to see yesterday Tony Blair weighed in on that and said, whatever you do, do not put too much pressure on this. Try to have a look at both sides. And I thought that was very interesting. The man that was one of the architects of the Good Friday Agreement, the man that also said that the protocol and the Good Friday Agreement couldn't live in the same space, very much, I wouldn't say warning, but advising the American president not to push too hard. And of course, Joe Biden is one of many American presidents to visit Northern Ireland. We had Bill Clinton, of course, then we had George Bush, and then Barack Obama, who addressed everyone in the waterfront hall. And this morning, more security will be very, very tightly in place in Belfast as he travels from here to the University of Ulster on the other side of the town.
Yeah, and as I understand it, you mentioned former American presidents there. Bill Clinton and Hillary are, I imagine now, both in town.
Well, they are. They're somewhere about. I would imagine they're probably in the same hotel down behind us.
No, they'll not be in the same hotel. They'll not be in the same hotel. Clinton's got his own suite 100 yards away in the Europa. It's the Clinton suite. What's he going to stay there for?
Well, this is the Grand Central. This is the place that's locked off.
You too.
This is where all the media will be, and the most prestigious place in Belfast. If he is in the Europa, well, it is the most bombed hotel in Europe. It has that ticket, but he could well be there. Who knows? But this is where the main action is at the moment.
OK, that's where the main action is. Dougie, thanks very much indeed. Keep us in the picture, and we'll speak to you throughout the morning. Thank you very much indeed.
Let's get some more assessment now from the Deputy Editor of Spiked, Fraser Myers. Good morning to you, Fraser. Look, always interesting to see the kind of red carpet that is rolled out for a President of the United States. Can't overstate how big a moment this is. And yet it does
It's not a big moment.
Well, it is to have
It's not a big moment.
Okay.
It's not a big moment at all. Explain to me why it's a big moment.
All I was going to say is it's not as big a moment as actually everybody thought it was going to be. And it's been quite significantly scaled back.
I tell you why it's not a big moment. He's only going to be there for 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah, but he's not addressing the Assembly. He's now, it was a big thing about meeting with the 5 parties. Now that's all being sort of played down. Certainly seems something of a diminished trip. And I wonder if he's heeding that advice from Tony Blair that Dougie was talking about.
Well, I suppose the big moment is the anniversary of the Belfast Agreement. That's obviously a historic thing. But yes, you're right. I mean, there's a lot of dysfunction in Northern Ireland, and so of course Biden can't meet Stormont because that's not up and running. That's unfortunately a sort of hangover of the Good Friday Agreement, the kind of power sharing rules. It's also a hangover of the post-Brexit deal, the Windsor Framework, which the DUP doesn't accept. Now, it's interesting, Biden has praised that deal. He's said he wants to defend it alongside the Good Friday Agreement. But if we look back, just 5 minutes ago, basically, Biden was saying that the Northern Ireland Protocol, which that deal replaced, was pretty much sacrosanct. He was saying that the UK won't get a trade deal if we reopen negotiations on that. He had his diplomats reprimand Lord Frost for trying to reopen negotiations on that. So I think maybe this is a realisation that Biden has been less than helpful in getting Northern Ireland up and running up to this point. And, his interference has not been a good thing. So perhaps it's wise for him to step
It is an
back.
amazing thing to see. I mean, Bill Clinton had a godlike presence in the whole Irish process. Both sides looked up to him. Both sides respected to him. You've got a situation here where the unionist part of the community in Northern Ireland obviously don't think Biden is their friend, and they would have, as you were pointing out there's strong evidence to support that.
Yeah, that's right. And obviously Biden has made a big show of his Irish heritage. He's going to be going to Dublin. He'll be going to various other counties in Ireland, doing this almost sort of who do you think you are style tour, looking at his ancestors. But politically as well, he has essentially, in these arguments, he's always backed the EU position, always backed the Dublin position, and hasn't had much sensitivity to the unionist position whatsoever.
Well, what I would take offence to, I think, right, you come to Northern Ireland on the 25th anniversary of this historic agreement, the reason we have peace, the reason that so many fewer people die. There is trouble on both sides, extremist sides of Republican and Loyalist sides at the moment, and he spends half a day there. He spends half a day there, and then he takes off doing his heritage tour after that. I mean, I think that's pretty despicable.
I think he is both, I think, for personal reasons, more interested in exploring his heritage, but also he's thinking about the Irish vote back home as well. You know, how
he's thinking about being re-elected.
I think there's a lot of domestic politics in this, yes, and Northern Ireland. Yeah, you're right. I think it is quite insulting that it's a bit of a flying visit, you know, for such a historic occasion.
Fraser, can I ask you, since we're talking about what goes on in Washington as well, big meeting going on with the IMF, shocking forecasts from them in relation to the UK's growth this year, but also interesting to see Jeremy Hunt, our Chancellor, over there, the Governor of the Bank of England, also over there. Real concerns about a possible new banking crisis.
Yeah, and those concerns are very legitimate. I mean, in the past couple of months, we've seen the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank, which was the largest, one of the largest banking collapses in America for decades. We've seen the collapse of Credit Suisse in Switzerland, which was taken over by its nearest rival. Now, there are specific reasons why both of those banks failed. In Silicon Valley, you have a tech economy that is exploding. There was a bubble waiting to burst. Also, interest rates putting pressure on that particular bank. Credit Suisse was full of scandals. It'd been caught spying on ex-employees. It had been doing money laundering for drug gangs, all kinds of things. So that, again, waiting to collapse for specific reasons. But there is this broader problem in the financial sector, and it has been brought to the surface by the rising interest rates that we're using to tamp down on inflation. So, yes, I think there will likely be other cracks in the system, and not just the banking system, because the banks are, very heavily regulated. Effectively, a lot of them are wards of the state now. But there's a whole shadow banking sector. Think about pension funds, hedge funds, payday lenders. These kinds of companies will also be experiencing those kinds of stresses. So it is a very worrying time.
Indeed. Well, on that note, thank you very much, Fraser. Thanks. We'll leave it there.
Fraser, thank you very much indeed. 11 minutes past 6 o'clock. A very good morning to you, wherever you're tuned in. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
MI5 has reportedly warned ministers that Chinese spies are slipping into Britain through a visa loophole.
Now, this comes amid concerns that almost 20 suspected terrorists with links to groups like ISIS have entered the UK via small migrant boats. So, the question is,
why is the country failing to keep out potential threats? Joining us now for more on this is the former head of the National Counter-Terrorism Security Office, Chris Phillips. Good morning to you, Chris. It does feel as though our borders are pretty porous, does it not?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, of course, the borders of the EU as well, because these same people are getting into France and getting into Germany. And then some of them are making their way over to the UK via these boats. It shouldn't be any surprise. We've known about this for a number of years.
what's about these Chinese spies?
And that, again, is pretty much common knowledge that people within China are really a part of the system, and the system is there to protect the Chinese economy and country. So listen, we have allowed ourselves to have these open borders, and it's not surprising that states that aren't friendly to us would make use of them.
And so how much of a challenge does that pose then when you've got actual legal possible spies coming in from China through this loophole, then you've got, you know, possible terrorists coming in without any documentation, presumably incredibly hard for the likes of you to have to be able to keep track of. I mean, how genuinely big a threat is that to security here, and what do the security services do about it?
Well, it is an absolutely enormous threat to the country. It's not only terrorists, of course. It's criminals as well. We know very well that the Albanian drug gangs are using that method to get people into the UK. Listen, we're tying our hands behind our back here, and making it so difficult for police security services to keep us safe. And everyone that comes over, of course, only one has to turn out to be a terrorist in order to cause huge loss of life in this country.
Yeah, just explain to us, Chris, the gangsterism throughout this country, whether it is people trading, whether it is, you know, prostitution, whether it is county lines, drug trafficking, and a lot of these are being run by foreign gangs.
Absolutely, and this has grown immeasurably over the last 10 years. And as I say, it's not only in the UK. People are being moved. Some of the people that are coming over will be trafficked. There's no doubt about that. In order to work in the drug farms, etc., that are popping up all over the UK and across Europe. This is an industry. You know, this is an industry getting people across the country, across the world, in order to work for them in these, as you said, the drug gangs. But the more concerning bit is the terrorism aspect to it. And if we know that 19 have come over, as this report shows, I think the numbers are much, much higher than that. And as I said, you only need one of those to go bad on us to have a massive loss of life like we had in Manchester.
Okay, Chris Phillips, thank you. Chris is a former head of the National Counter-Terrorism Security Office, and we're talking about people getting into the country who shouldn't be here. We're letting spies in, and we know they're spies. Is that, Chris, just before we go, is there a sort of quid pro quo in all of this? Do we let Chinese spies in and they let our spies in? Everybody knows they're being spied on, so there's a sort of give and take philosophy, or not?
I think that is the case. Of course, we've got thousands of spies all across the world. That's how MI6 operate. Whether it's actually going into a country, some of them will be pretending to work there in order to get access to information. It's common knowledge across the world that this sort of thing goes on. But of course, at the moment in particular, we've got issues with the Chinese government and the Chinese country.
OK, thanks, Chris. Leave it there. Thank you very much indeed. Would you ever like to be a spy?
I like the idea because I've got an inner detective. I always say to people, I know what's going on. I just have like a weird
Sixth sense.
Spying mentality.
Yeah.
But I'm also a family person. I couldn't just pack my bags and go on the other side of the world and live a new life for 6 months and be deployed here. And that's why I didn't really like being a correspondent very much.
Yeah, but you're snoopy and nosy enough to spy on people's bank accounts or whatever.
Oh,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, OK.
Love all that.
16 minutes past the hour. Let's bring you up to date with what's happening news-wise. And the junior doctor strike, thousands of them are on strike for a second day. Members of the British Medical Association are staging 4 days of industrial action. Downing Street's refusing to hold further talks with the union unless it abandons its 35% pay rise demands.
A new study shows the cost of childcare in the UK is forcing 1 in 4 parents to give up their job or education. Global children's charity Their World has found 74% of parents say they find it difficult to meet the costs. It's calling on governments to urgently prioritise spending on the early years.
Just look at the weather situation. Winds of up to 60 miles an hour have hit Britain overnight. Unsettled weather expected over the coming days. There are yellow weather warnings for wind and rain until lunchtime today. The Met Office warning people they may have to deal with difficult road conditions and persistent rain. This is particularly prominent in the southwest of the country. If you're in somewhere like Torquay, for instance, today, get in touch with us. Let us know what the weather situation is and, more importantly, how you're dealing with it.
You call it nosy, I call it naturally curious.
You're a snoop.
Inquisitive.
Snoop.
Well, not only am I what you would call a snoop, but I also do find it a little bit funny when people fall over. Now, I know that sounds awful, but it's not because I'm laughing at someone's misfortune. I get a nervous laugh if someone has an accident. I'm getting it now because I think you think I'm a bad person. But I do get this nervous laugh when people have accidents, even my own children.
So with other people's misfortune, the fact that
it's sort of like, oh...
Well, I'm like the Hunchback of Notre Dame now.
No.
Because, I've got a deformed shoulder. Now, because I've fallen backwards down the stairs.
I did say to our colleagues this morning, look, if it's a perfectly healthy person that falls, there's a little bit of funniness in that. If it's you, who I know had to relearn to walk in the last few months, then I wouldn't laugh, because I know that would be a big deal. Just to clarify, would you laugh at me if I fell over?
I laugh at most things you do. I mean, you're an awkward-looking person. I mean, you're a bit gangly, aren't you?
My arms are quite long.
You've got long arms. You've got big hands. You've big feet. You're very. So I mean, you're not. You're a bit like if you get those model people who design monsters for films and things. You'd make the good basis of a creature.
Just a monster.
A creature.
I'm a monster on a hill.
No, but like an alien, they had big feet and big hands.
My feet are size 7, by the way, which is perfectly normal for a lady.
What? 7 and 7, 14?
No, they're size 7. What size are your feet? Have you got small little feet?
I don't have small little feet.
I wondered if
Anyway, Isabel laughs at people who fall. Is that a good... I mean...
Sorry, there was a reason we were talking about that.
She says it's a nervous reaction.
Yes.
To do that.
Slapstick.
Why are we talking about this?
I don't know. It's in the Express
Laughing
today.
at a colleague.
Won't stand up as a harassment case. Quite
right. So somebody trips or whatever and you laugh at them, they can say, I was victimised at work. No. They laughed at me.
Well,
they
I wouldn't
mocked
laugh
me.
at... that makes it sound awful. Someone has an actual genuine claim and then you'd laugh. That's mean.
I mean, if I didn't like them...
mean-spirited.
If I didn't like them, I'd laugh.
Anyway, let us know. Would you laugh at someone falling? I mean it affectionately.
Or I'd laugh behind their back.
Well, that's even worse. You see, you're just... pretend to be nice, but actually...
No, there's lots of people I don't like. I mean, in this world, you can't say you don't like people. There's loads of people I don't like.
I'm increasingly realising that.
No, there's not. I would love to sit in the TV world and all the ones who go, oh, good morning, I'm so lovely, be with me, and you think they're horrible.
Quite a lot of falseness in this industry.
Yes.
That was one of the first things you taught me.
Was it?
Yeah. Should we stop talking before we talk too much?
OK.
It's 6:20. Stay with us if you're driving to work this morning. We'll tell you...
It's not 6:20. Is it 6:20? Oh, it is, right. So my eye can't see that clock.
We'll be telling you about the regular check you need to do on your car. Perhaps they've got baldy tyres. Let's not bring that up again. It could see you fined with £10,000 if you forget.
What? Your tyres aren't right and they're going to fine you 10 grand?
Yeah.
But, like, you can hijack and joyride a car and you get a 20 quid fine?
Yeah.
What a lot. This sums this country up, it really does. Back after this.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Just looking ahead, still to come on the programme today.
It's 6:23, but at 6:45 we will bring you the latest on the restoration of Blackfriars Bridge.
Why? What's happening there?
Well, all the paint has faded.
Isn't that a hideous colour?
Well, it's going to be a lovely, vibrant red. It's the famous bridge. Whenever you see the iconic picture of the Thames with St Paul's Cathedral behind it, you normally see Blackfriars Bridge in front of it. So it's been given a fresh lick of paint and being brought back to its former glory, or as some people like to call it, a little bit of a glow up. Over 100 years since it's
Of course,
had a...
but that's not why it's famous.
Oh, really? Go on
It's
then.
famous for the Italian banker, the head of the Vatican Bank, who was hung.
Oh.
Remember, he was found hung under it.
No.
Yes.
Did not know that.
So, yeah, so...
Tell me more.
The theory is that the mafia hung him as a warning that you launder our money or you end up like this.
Good grief.
Yeah.
Crikey.
OK. Just thought I'd throw a bit of light knowledge in there.
Thank you.
Just after 7 o'clock, we'll meet the cousin of Joe Biden.
I love
Right?
that.
So he's
Everyone
obviously
wants
going to
to be
spend
his
more
cousin.
time with his cousins than he is with us in Northern Ireland as they wait to find out if they'll get to meet him today.
I wonder what the criteria is to, qualify as a cousin. This is a 5th cousin or a 6th cousin, but, they're doing DNA checks.
See, I have a lot of
Everyone
cousins.
I have one cousin.
Get out of it.
I have one cousin.
But if you're in Ireland, you have hundreds of cousins.
Yeah.
So many cousins. Everybody claims they're your cousin. Sure, Eamonn, you know me. I'm one of your cousins.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Gosh,
Yeah.
I couldn't cope with that. My cousin's like my sister. Anyway, look, get in touch in all the usual ways. Email us your views. Somebody send me some moral support this morning. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Now, here's a bit of stupid news we've got for you. If you drive a car, they're threatening you now with a fine of up to £10,000. You wouldn't even be fined £10,000 if you committed a murder. You know, how blooming ridiculous is this? So if you don't check your tyres, now I have to get to the bottom of this. I don't mean if that means your tyres are baldy or they're...
Don't bring this down to us.
What?
Not everyone knows what a baldy tyre is. We've had this before. Half
Well,
the audience knew what they
how
were.
stupid do they have to be not to know what a baldy
Let's ask Jodie
tyre
Bevan,
is?
owner of MNJ Auto Care and Woodend MOT Centre Limited. Do you know what a baldy tyre is, genuinely? Of course.
Absolutely. We see them all the time.
See, how
It's one of the
stupid
most
are you?
common
You just show up how
failures.
stupid you are. That's a really stupid thing to do.
Do some people...
Do you ask a woman who runs a tyre centre, do you know what a baldy tyre is?
Trust me, last time we talked about this on the programme, half the inbox said, never heard of it before, from all over the country.
God.
Anyway. Sorry.
Jodie, tell me, there's a couple of things we've got to establish. First of all, when is your tyre baldy? When is your tyre below limits? But secondly, why is this all so important? This seems to be an horrendous amount of money to fine anyone, £10,000. Pretty scary stuff.
Yeah, it is. I mean, the legal limit for a tyre is 1.6 mil. And a lot of people don't know what that measurement is. And it's difficult for people to try and know that without any gauge. So there is a rule of thumb that people use, and it's a 20p piece.
Oh.
And basically, if you can read the 20p piece wording when you put it within the tread itself, then you need to change your tyres.
Ooh.
Right, got
Okay,
so that's
if you
an
use
easy
a
thing.
£20 piece, you could save yourself £10,000. But I suppose the reason that this has been clamped down on is because actually not having the correct tread on your tyres is potentially hugely dangerous. I mean, how dangerous is it?
It's really dangerous. What people need to remember is you are in control of a really big, heavy, powerful piece of, equipment or car, whatever it is that you want to call it. You are in charge of that. And the only port of contact with the road is your tyres. And if you've got no tread on them tyres, if you've got no grip, then obviously that's where the danger is. So we see tyres on a regular basis that come through the MOT bay, and the cords are hanging out. And it's sometimes on the inner edge of the tyre. So people will check the tyres, but it's not just the tread itself, it's the inner edge and the inner shoulders.
So do you actually say, do you get a situation, Jodie, at your place where cars will fail the MOT because the cords are hanging out of the actual rubber?
Absolutely. That's a regular occurrence.
Yeah. Well, that's awful that people don't even have the wit to realise that is such a bad thing, and it should be dealt with. What puts them off? Is it the price of a tyre puts them off?
Yeah, I mean, especially at the moment, I usually tell people not to go down the part-worn tyre. Don't go down that route. But with things as they are at the moment, people are struggling for money. We can't now tell them people not to do that. But there is ways of checking your tread. The 20p piece is the one. We have a tyre tread depth gauge, obviously, for the MOT bay. But it's the condition of the tyre as well. Check your inflation, that the air is the right, measurement for that tyre. It will tell you in your handbook, and it will also tell you on the edge of the tyre, on the sidewall of the tyre. That's another really important thing.
Yeah.
Steering geometry. The tracking, another important thing. If the tracking isn't right, the geometry of the steering isn't correct, then tyres will wear unevenly.
Yeah. And tell me...
There's lots of different ways.
Yeah, an area that people don't look at, Jodie, a lot of times people think, well, I've had these tyres, I just need to kill a fruit fly. Dead.
Sorry, ironically, on a banana on the front of the sun.
Good.
Don't mind us.
We're talking about, a lot of people think, well, I've had my tyre 5 years, 7 years, whatever, and the tread's absolutely fine, but they forget their walls, don't they?
Yes, absolutely. We're seeing also a lot of cars. If you don't do much miles, that doesn't mean that your tyre is in good condition. If a car is stood or it doesn't do many miles, the rubber is starting to perish. It can crack as well, which is another failure for an MOT. They can crack so deep that you can see the cords. Now, there is a method on the sidewall of the tyre. If you look for like a rounded rectangle shape, there are 4 digits, 4 numbers. 2 numbers and another 2 numbers. The first 2 numbers is the week, and the second 2 numbers is the year, and that is the year and the week that tyre was manufactured. So we basically try to advise that if a tyre is over 10 years old, you need to change that tyre.
Yeah. Jodie, you just taught Eamonn something he didn't know about tyres. I was beginning to think you had a degree in this.
Yeah, no, I have found myself in that situation where I had a car I didn't do much mileage on, and I thought that the tyre tread was absolutely fantastic, but I forgot about my walls, and your walls do bubble and they do crack. Yes. Have you never had cracked walls?
True. Funnily enough, my car is having its tyres looked at today, but I just do what the garage says and my husband takes it. I know that sounds terribly old-fashioned. And it's actually, sorry, just distract from the topic, but Jodie, it is really amazing to see a female car mechanic because, I mean, if I think of my group of friends, not many of us are very good on the old tyres and all this walls and baldness and stuff. I'm learning a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I learned a lot.
Yeah, it's good because I do have a large female customer base, and a lot of them have the confidence to come and ask me, how do I check my oil? Which one's my coolant? Which one's my screen wash? And it's sad because things like that aren't taught now within lessons and within tests, where they used to be years ago. So really, it's not always down to the people themselves. Maybe.
You see, I think
more
education.
I think actually we should all be made to do our driving test every 5 years or 7 years. We should all be made to resit and know the mechanics of a car. The basic, I mean, nowadays it just takes a computer to fix a car. Mechanics really are superfluous to a lot of it. You plug it into something and that's it. But there should be basic things. We should all know how to change a tyre. That should be a rudimental thing.
Can't I just call AA?
Absolutely. I mean, Even that they've made very difficult. You know, they don't have spare tyres now in the modern cars. They have the inflators with the foam to get you home, you know.
Get you home.
Definitely the basics, how to check your oil, how to check your water, etc., and how to check your tyres, check your lights. If you do a motorcycle a motorcycle test, they do teach you those things because it's safety.
Yeah.
Well, brilliant.
And
You're
that
up
should
in
be
Oldham. Thanks very much. What's your weather like this morning? We're talking about this storm, Anthony, that's come in over the country. Did you notice, was your weather bad this morning when you came into work?
Not too bad, just a little bit drizzly.
Right, OK, that's good. That's
Good
the
to
picture
hear.
from Oldham there. And Jodie is the owner of MNJ Autocare and Woodend MOT Centre Limited in Oldham. Thank you. Lovely talking to you. Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, lots of...
Have a 20p.
Thank
20p.
you. Lots of food for thought for me. I guess I've just been a bit blasé, to be honest, about it all. So maybe I need to be better educated about cars.
Do you actually know where your jack is in your car? Yeah. You see, it's not...
But bear in mind, I used to drive. I covered an 18,000 square mile patch of the UK on my own as a correspondent. And I drove all day, every day. And I didn't know any of those things.
But you see, if you were a cowboy or a cowgirl, your horse would be the difference
Yes, and I'd
between
look
life
after
and
my
death.
horse. And I
you'd
know
look
how to
after your
change a
horse.
horse's shoe.
And so therefore, I treat my car like my horse. I get into my car and I make sure...
You just think you're John Wayne or something. And your car is your wagon. I don't know.
Well, that's the way you got to treat it, isn't it?
Yes.
That's the way it should be.
OK.
And I'm not saying, nowadays, most men are useless. Most men
I mean, I
can't do
couldn't
anything.
possibly agree.
They can't do what their parents do. They can't do what their grandparents ever done. But we're not trained in so many areas. But I think we should all know how to change a tyre.
Yeah.
I think we should.
OK, point made. Got it.
Right, let's talk about much more interesting things like the International Monetary Fund. It's over to Isabel.
Yeah, they say the world economy is entering a perilous phase. It's not looking good for the UK either. We're going to find out what David Mellor and Scarlett Maguire think about it when we go through the papers.
Yeah, but can they change their tyre? That's the question.
Probably not.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit off.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Welcome back, 6:36. Time to have a look at today's front pages.
Let's do that.
Come on.
Yes. Joe Biden, in and out, in Northern Ireland and out for a few hours today. And yet he says, Northern Irish peace is my priority. Yeah, OK.
The Mail is pointing the finger at the leader of England's Junior Doctors Union, who's gone on holiday during the most disruptive strike in NHS history.
The Eye says the world economy is in peril as the UK heads for its worst growth in the G7.
And the Metro is revealing that a phone theft epidemic. They say thieves steal a handset every 6 minutes in the City of London. Gosh.
So what does that mean? Does that mean London or the City of London?
London.
London.
Greater London. Yeah.
And the Mirror have a royal exclusive as they reveal the King's coronation has been plunged into turmoil due to overrunning rehearsals. And
Why are you laughing at all the headlines this morning?
Well, there's not a lot of...
serious.
It's not very serious. It's ridiculous.
3 weeks to go, the pressure is on.
But anybody who has a party...
lifetime experience.
Anybody that has a wedding, it never goes according to
This is more than any wedding, let me tell you. There have been many royal weddings in recent years. When was the last coronation?
Well, what do we care? We're not working on it.
Stop it.
We'll just be sitting at home, watching it on the telly. Doesn't matter to me. I'll be laughing. But anyway, joining us to go through the papers in more detail this morning, we've got David Mellor and we've got the hilarious Scarlett Maguire, who laughs at everything I say. You're just laughing at everything.
Oh, I know. You're such a comic, Eamonn.
I'm so glad.
My God.
So
Never get off your knees, honestly.
No, this is called Going to Jordan for a Week, which is the most wonderful country to go on holiday in.
This comment is sponsored by the Jordan
the
Travel
sea,
Service.
the desert, and then the amazing Petra, which just exceeds expectations.
Yeah, Petra's incredible. Did you go to the...
Do you know Petra was a dog on Blue Peter? Do you know that? Petra was the original dog.
Petra was named after the World Heritage Site of Petra.
Probably.
Right, which is incredible. A whole city carved out of sandstone.
Yeah.
I mean, it is just amazing, isn't it, Isabel?
Yeah.
That's
wonderful.
OK, where are we going to begin? Let's begin with...
Yes, I have.
Let's begin with Joe Biden, David.
Having moved from a few amateur jokes, let's have a serious professional joke.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like watching a sad old what's-it on a saga cruise, going back to his roots. I mean, I think that Biden has spent a few hours in Northern Ireland, plainly not really engaged. He chooses to ignore the fact that actually a lot of his forebears, insofar as I'm remotely interested in his forebears, come from Sussex. But it's the Blewitts from County whatever that he wishes to focus on. And, you know, the banal question, when you look at the sort of headlines, Guardian and other things, Biden, this is a quote from Biden, "Keep the peace, that's the main thing." I mean, really? Is that the best the President of the United States can say by way of profound comments? Anyway, Biden is here to celebrate his Irish ancestry. This is not dangerous, except in one respect. Personally, I have no time for the DUP. And I think the DUP, you know, they make every mistake that they can and assume that we are on their side. Well, I, for one, am not on their side. But one of the things that's interesting is if you're the President of the United States and you want to have an impact positively, the DUP will just not listen to a word he says because they'll just see him as another old Irish guy, sentimental about his roots, with no time whatsoever for the Protestants.
But he hasn't. I mean, that's the thing. I think it's quite obvious that he hasn't. And he sends out, and if he has, he's sending out the wrong message. There's another American president in town, Bill Clinton, who is revered by both sides for the role that he played 25 years ago.
And
He was quite lucky. I was just Googling his religious background because I was curious. He apparently went to a Catholic university, Clinton, but he went to a Baptist church. So in many ways, he was the perfect president to do what he did. Whereas Biden, unashamedly is overtly Catholic, devoutly Catholic, which is obviously going to make him a bit controversial in such a sectarian place.
When Biden got elected, one of Clinton's most senior foreign policy advisors said there wasn't a single issue he was on the right side of. I think he's rather proving.
But I think that one has to think, what is Biden's role? And obviously, he doesn't see, unlike Bill Clinton, he doesn't see of keeping all the sides together. He sort of says something about peace. And actually, he's not fond of Britain at the moment. I mean, we were threatening to wreck the Good Friday peace agreement. We were renegotiating the Northern Irish Protocol. all of which he opposed. And so, I mean, I think one has to remember that there is history here, not just because he's an Irish Catholic.
Except if there's room for a bit of truth here, I don't know whether we're dealing in truth.
David,
The truth.
Now
you're back from Jordan. You deserve all you get. But let me just say,
now I'm back from Jordan. I am speaking the truth. I mean, there has been real problems between Britain and the US.
Trying to be serious for one
I think that's
minute.
probably linking to Boris Johnson and Liz Truss. He had real problems with them and has a
No,
better
but
relationship
wait a minute.
with
This is
Rishi Sunak.
the most powerful man in the world. This is the man who can lead the way. This is the man who can say to the Democratic Unionists and Sinn Féin and Rishi Sunak, the only way ahead is this Windsor framework. This is the way it's going to work. We're going to lead the way. We'll give you whatever backup and support that you need to make you part of Europe and part of Ireland and part of the UK as well. And he's not, Scarlett, providing that leadership. And as I say, I go back to Clinton. This man was gold dust, charismatic beyond belief 25 years ago.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, he has chosen not to take that role. He's absolutely made it quite clear that actually, as far as he's concerned, Rishi Sunak is another, here today, gone tomorrow politician, like the last two. And actually, he's concentrating on Ireland, the country, the Republic of Ireland. There's no question.
He's concentrating on being re-elected.
Yeah, and
in the
his
American
Irish
presidential
people.
elections.
And when one talks about, the threats to peace, the biggest threat to peace was the insistence of the EU of having quasi-border arrangements, which they didn't need to do in Northern Ireland, thereby reopening all the old wounds. And Boris, in typical Boris style, gave away things that he thought he could claw back, and now he can't. So there's a border down the middle of the Irish Sea.
Well, shall we look at something that will cheer us up?
Well, it won't cheer us up.
That was ironic. The state of the UK economy. Apparently, we're the worst in the G7 for growth, and the IMF warning that the global economy is entering a perilous phase.
I know. No, this is really, really bad news, actually. I mean, people, obviously, who disagree with it say the IMF are always wrong.
Yeah, I say that.
Right.
Just so you know.
But I mean, we've been having bad predictions for a while. We've been having that we're the only country in the G8, apart from Russia, which does have sanctions on it, which is doing badly. They say that Germany is also going to be below growth, but we will be the worst. And it's because the prices aren't coming down, inflation and interest rates. Well, what happened when Liz Truss was in for her 44 days or however long it was? I mean, we are still living with that disaster.
Although, look, Liz Truss isn't responsible for global problems with inflation and
she
interest
is
rates,
responsible for us being worse than the
IMF
others.
Specifically talking about the whole world facing these challenges at the moment. And it does certainly seem as though the OBR were perhaps a bit optimistic post the budget in March, David?
Quite likely. But, I think a lot of these forecasts are often wrong. But what is quite clear is that it's about, the Conservatives, it was always the rule, wasn't it? You didn't like the Conservatives, but you thought they were quite good at what they did. Well, now we don't like them and they're not very good at what they do. That's a real problem, I think.
Yeah, economic competence is the key to the next election.
Yeah.
And
it's the economy, stupid.
Absolutely. To quote a certain Bill Clinton who won a couple of elections.
Well, Rishi Sunak's closing the gap in the polls, isn't he? He's
certainly closing. I mean, look, Rishi Sunak is a far more competent Prime Minister than either of his predecessors, than either Boris Johnson or Liz Truss. But the problem he's got is, we've had... he's still in a Conservative government. We've had 13 years of no growth. We've got Liz Truss blaming wokeness, for God's sake. I mean, how she has the gall to start making speeches about what's wrong with the British
economy.
economy.
To go into politics.
Well, talking of having the gall, what about the leader of the Junior Doctors Union who's gone on holiday during this strike that he's insisted
I find this interesting because one of the issues that's always been difficult for governments when dealing with strikes, particularly junior doctors, nurses, is the tendency for the popular press to take their side. I mean, I remember when I was health minister, they said that a junior doctor was so tired, he fell asleep across a patient on an operating table. I called that a fisherman's tale. Oh, I was hauled over the front pages of most of the tabloids. And they never produced the guy and never showed. But now, look, this is interesting. This fellow goes away on holiday, and he is a trustafarian, he's got very wealthy parents and the rest of it. I mean, how on earth he can justify going away on holiday when there's a dispute to deal with? But it's enough to make you sick, says the Mail, and there's lots of other headlines like that in the Telegraph and elsewhere. And the question is, the junior doctors are asking for a 35% wage increase. I mean, they're supposed to be intelligent people. That is cheeky. And of course, a lot of people, they believe in the NHS. They don't believe in the NHS as simply a way of paying a lot of people a lot more money.
But they believe in the NHS as having the best staff. I think it is a bad tactic from the union to keep claiming a 36% pay deficit and whatever. However true it may be, they should simply say we want another 15 quid an hour or whatever it happens to be. But I must admit, David, I'm aghast that you get people so highly trained. It takes so long for them to do what they do. We want the best. Why won't we pay for the best? You pay peanuts, you get monkeys.
But can I tell you something? That is because, and believe me, I spent a couple of years of my life that I'll never get back having to deal with all of this stuff. The BMA believes in the old way of doing things where all the money goes to the consultants. So the idea is, if you're a junior doctor, you slog your way up the ranks and suddenly the riches of heaven open up onto you. You can have a private practice, you can have an NHS practice, but you have to go and serve your term.
Well, but this is changing, right? And Eamonn's right. I mean, we know that the junior doctors' strike is much, much more difficult for the NHS than the nurses. Right? Of course. I mean, we know how bad it is, and of course they're not going to get 35%. They're going to get nowhere near it. But
why are they asking for it?
What they're saying is they're 35.
It's not a joke. You shouldn't be joking around.
I'm not joking.
No, not you. Sorry.
Right.
You are a woman I respect beyond any. But the junior doctors are asking for 35%.
No, but
You're saying effectively they're not serious. Well, why are they asking for it then? Why are they wasting our time?
It's all about negotiations, isn't it? But what is scary is that the biggest new people going to Australia are nurses at the moment because they're being paid more. And we're going to get doctors. And we cannot afford to lose. We don't have enough. And actually, it's the normal stupid thing that has been going on with all the strikes is why wasn't the government negotiating a year ago? And why instead are we having a media row instead of getting around a table and actually working out how we
know that it doesn't work like that. Getting round a table is an overrated thing to do, actually.
Well,
there's no basic
it has
agreement.
begun to work, and that's why a lot of strikes don't happen, is because people get round tables.
Scarlett, I just wanted to ask you if you'd heard some of the suggestions that some of the sort of former Momentum, sort of hardline left-wingers have infiltrated the BMA and are actually sort of driving a lot of this. I mean, if you have a view on it?
I haven't heard this at all. I mean, honestly, I think it's very, very... I mean, I think David's story about the BMA wanting a lot of money for consultants is much more likely. I mean, to be respected as a trade unionist among doctors, you have to be a trained doctor. I mean, this isn't something that you go into because you're thinking, oh, I'm a bit... It's not... and of course you'll get left-wing doctors and you will get right-wing doctors. I mean, I do not think anybody's infiltrating anything, but I do think there is... Look, when my consultant says, and this is a cancer consultant, says, I am having problems coping. Remember, all the backlog these junior doctors are having to... They are working incredibly hard. And if you get something wrong, as Eamonn knows, right... It really, really matters.
OK. Scarlett, David, thank you very much indeed. More views from these two in 40 minutes' time. The time, 9 minutes now before 7. Let's bring you up to date with the top stories. And Labour has pledged to save the high streets through a new 5-point plan. Sir Keir Starmer and Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves are in Great Yarmouth today to launch a new 5-point plan, which includes cutting business rates.
Holidaymakers are being warned to look out for scam travel deals amid passport delays. The Chartered Trading Standards Institute says scammers are tricking potential travellers into paying for holidays and services that don't exist.
Liz Truss will urge Conservatives to get real about the threat from authoritarian regimes as she delivers a speech in Washington. Britain's shortest-serving Prime Minister will say that low taxes, limited government and private enterprise is the best way to counter threats like China.
Now, it's one of the oldest structures in the City of London and over the last few years has been a victim of rust and wear. But now Blackfriars Bridge, first opened during the Victorian era, is getting a modern-day makeover.
Let's go now to Lisa Hartle. She went out to find out how the restoration efforts are going, and it all involves a big lick of paint.
Bridging the River Thames since 1869, Blackfriars Bridge was first opened by Queen Victoria. Over time, the paint has faded and rust is setting in, so a 3-year restoration project is underway.
It's the traffic that uses the bridge has completely changed. The bridge was widened in 1903 and there were trams on it. So the bridge is now dealing with things that it didn't have to deal with when it was originally made. What we're hoping to do is protect the structure of it and also the really ornate metal work and the cast iron work that we see on the front of the bridge and on the top of the bridge, so that it can continue for decades to come.
2,168 bolsters form part of the bridge. Each one has to be removed, restored and then replaced again.
This just looks like really boring graffiti.
Absolutely.
Someone who loves maths that loves graffitiing.
Every single one of these balusters gets identified individually. So when we take it away, we know exactly where it came from. We know exactly where it's going to go back to.
Tiniest ladders ever.
With the slowest ladder descent of my life, we climb down the side of the bridge.
So I'm sat literally on the lip of the bridge, if that's the term, lip of the bridge, and the rest of the bridge is up here, and below me, these feet below this wooden thing is the Thames. So this is a big structure that's all been built so that this part of the bridge can all be repainted, and I'm going to use a technical term now. Things like the what I like to call a giant's button can be re-gilded with gold because it's all been prepared and ready for that to happen.
Further down we climbed and found ourselves underneath the bridge.
This has pretty much been finished, so it's all lovely and glossy and shiny. But to give you an idea of the scale of it, there are 10 other bays of this to be complete that have still got to complete for just this span. So the width of the bridge is huge, and you can probably appreciate that the bulk of the work is actually painting the underside of the bridge in this fantastic white.
So you've got a lot of pigeons to evict that way now.
They're slowly making their way out, yeah.
Before we headed back out of the temporary labyrinth, there was one more thing Tom wanted to show us.
We're now on the upstream side, so these are the freshwater birds, which are just fantastic, ornate carvings. These are all original, so they've been looking over the Thames for 153 years. They form part of the pier, and they're supposed to look like a pulpit on the top, and it's a nod to the Blackfriars Monastery, which the bridge is named after.
To get people going up there with bottles of water to get christened.
I've not seen it, but I wouldn't put it past them.
The refurbishment, which is taking 3 years, is costing £15 million.
This is being funded by Bridge House Estates, and this is a charity that's existed for over 900 years now, and it owns the bridges of the City of London. There are 5 bridges, and this is the oldest of the bridges.
The work is set to be completed by summer next year. Lisa Hartle, GB News, London.
Shame they're not doing anything about Hammersmith Bridge. Well, they are, but...
What are they doing about Hammersmith Bridge? It's just
been
closed.
4 years, yeah, and no one can drive over it still, so...
Yeah.
Anyway.
But anyway, that bridge is famous for Roberto Calvi, the Italian banker. He was the Vatican's banker. And the idea was that he wasn't laundering enough mafia money. So the theory is that they took him and they hung him under...
Who's they? The mafia?
The mafia. You don't mess with the mafia.
I didn't know we had the mafia.
So he's found swinging under Blackfriars Bridge, and as a deterrent to anybody else who thinks,
wow,
don't do what the mafia tell you.
True story.
That's why I'm telling you to go to the weather now.
Let's go to the weather.
Hello there, very good morning to you. I'm Jonathan Vautry here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. We have a very windy day ahead of us, particularly if you are in western southern areas of the UK, all due to the squeeze around this area of low pressure that's going to be dominating our weather throughout Wednesday, particularly southern coastal areas of England up into southwest Wales and then Northern Ireland as well. We have the potential for 40, 50 mile an hour gusts inland, but 60 mile an hour plus along some coastal areas. That is enough to cause some travel disruption, particularly to ferries, and we could see some large waves around those coasts as well. We'll be accompanied by some quite heavy rain, at times perhaps wintry over the higher grounds of Eryri and the Pennines. Slightly drier further to the east and the north, but certainly still the risk of some showers throughout the day. Temperatures quite disappointing, around 7 to 10 degrees Celsius. Add on the strength of that wind, it's going to feel more like 2 or 4 degrees if you step outside. Into this evening, continuing to see those showery outbreaks of rain. Might ease off a bit more into Wales, southwestern areas of England as we move into the second half of the night, but still quite breezy here. The rain persisting across the north, particularly Argyll and Bute, down into the Scottish borders and northern areas of England. Underneath some of those clearer intervals, we could see temperatures drop down towards 2-4 degrees Celsius, but with the breeze around, that will reduce the risk of frost for all of us. Some brightness early on Thursday for Wales, central southern areas of England, and the winds will also be easing down here a bit more as well. Still will feel slightly cold, but hopefully slightly better compared to Wednesday at least. The showers persisting in the north, and it will remain quite blustery across Northern Ireland, southern areas of Scotland and northern England. Temperatures again hovering around 10, maybe now 12, 13 degrees Celsius in the south. Remaining quite unsettled as we head into Friday as well, perhaps drying off a bit more, particularly in the south and east for Saturday, and we'll also see those temperatures climbing back up towards 16 degrees. Bye-bye.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel. Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
President Biden promises to keep the peace as he touches down in Belfast.
Hello there, very good morning to you. Just after 7 o'clock on this Wednesday, the 20th of April. You're tuned into Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. The US President has pledged to make sure the Good Friday Agreement and the Windsor Framework stay in place as he prepares for historic talks today aimed at restoring power sharing.
Last night he was met at Belfast Airport on the steps of Air Force One by Rishi Sunak ahead of a meeting between the two leaders today.
The Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, is in Washington to meet with world leaders in a bid to avoid a new global financial crisis. It comes as the IMF forecasts the UK to be the worst performing G7 economy this year.
Downing Street has ruled out talks with junior doctors unless they drop their calls for a 35% pay rise. They call this demand unreasonable. Now, this comes amid reports that the co-chair of the BMA is on holiday while the walkouts are taking place.
And the King's coronation plans are reportedly in chaos due to a string of last-minute problems. With just over 3 weeks until the ceremony, insiders are saying that among the issues are an unfinished seating plan due to Harry and Meghan still not confirming their attendance.
Something which can be easily fixed. Strike them off. Get in touch the usual way, gbviews at gbnews.uk, and let us know where you're watching or listening to today, and more importantly, what the weather is like in your particular area, particularly the southwest. We believe the west and southwest of the country will be particularly badly hit today.
So it is our top story this morning. The US president has vowed to keep the peace as he touches down in Belfast ahead of a day of diplomatic talks.
He was greeted last night on the steps of Air Force One by the Prime Minister, who he will hold a meeting with later today.
The president will also visit the University of Ulster to deliver a short speech before then heading to the Republic of Ireland.
Now, this comes amid continuing security concerns with 4 suspected pipe bombs found in a cemetery in Derry yesterday.
Well, joining us now for more on this is our Northern Ireland reporter, Dougie Beattie. Look, hugely serious and expensive security programme underway there to keep the president safe. How important and historic is today for Northern Ireland?
Well, it is important for Northern Ireland. Historic, probably not. I mean, Bill Clinton arrived here back in '98. He was greeted by thousands and thousands of people. Last night in the Bedford Street area here, it was wind and rain, but about 100 people gathered to see him arrive. There was no great cheers or claps or anything of that. It was very, very low key. The great and good of politics and Rishi Sunak greeted him at Aldergrove. The cavalcade came down to this area, and of course Bedford Street is usually known for theatre and business. In fact, behind us is Northern Ireland's business hub. This is the old Ledu type building in West NI, and that's where Northern Ireland is setting itself out in the world stage, and that's where politicians will be looking more towards Joe Biden for investment coming into Northern Ireland. But of course that will be stalled as well because of the framework. It insists that there's no state aid or for FDIs that would come in here. So there's lots of problems around that Joe Biden has to address, and he's not going to address those in a couple of hours here before he leaves for the Republic of Ireland. As for the 4 pipe bombs last night that were found in Derry, we've got to really explain the word bomb in this is not massive. These are devices that are used mainly in riots. They are a fearful thing. I have faced them myself. And when they come into riots, they usually light them and throw them in amongst the police. You'll see the police with long boots on them and almost like motorcycle boots defending them, and they try to kick these things out of the road when they come in. They can be deadly, but they're basically an improvised grenade, and they're not really what you would describe as a bomb as we would think of it.
Yeah, all of which just describes the situation, how toxic it is at the minute, how volatile it is at the minute, and whether it is loyalist extremists or Republican extremists, there is fractions going on there. But what about Biden himself? He seems to be shying away from any direction, Dougie, on any leadership here at all.
Well, this is more or less an election campaign now for Joe Biden. We know he's going to stand in the next election. The amount of time he's spending in Northern Ireland is minuscule, but compared to what he's going into the south of Ireland. But amazingly, actually, most American presidents that claim Irish roots came from Northern Ireland as opposed to the Republic of Ireland. But you're correct, Eamonn. He doesn't seem to have any direction. It's almost as if he's not being briefed on it exactly what is going on here. I would find that hard to believe, though. But it is more of a PR exercise to say, I'm here, I've landed, if you need me, I will be standing by. There is an investment conference scheduled for later on in the year in around September. And you would imagine the American institutions will be involved in that at quite high levels. But we've had them before, especially after the Good Friday Agreement the last time. But as I was saying yesterday, 25 years on from the signing of the Good Friday Agreement, I mean, you just wouldn't know Belfast. Yesterday I was at the marina in the Titanic Quarter, and of course that was all brought about by investment from other countries outside of the UK.
Dougie, thank you very much indeed. We want to go back in time 25 years now and speak to the author and the broadcaster, the political commentator Eamonn Malley, who was very much there as part of the reporting on the Good Friday Agreement. Eamonn, I don't know about you, but you go back 25 years and we see the charisma and the leadership of Bill Clinton and the role America played in bringing the peace about. We now have, 25 years later, another American president, another Democrat, who just seems to be, I don't want to touch this, I'll touch down and I'll get out again. Is it a bit disappointing, Biden's role in all of this?
I wouldn't underplay or underestimate his role, but this is my observation. For some extraordinary reason, this visit by President Biden, said to be one of the most powerful men in the world, is no doubt being hollowed out. Why it's being hollowed out, I do not know. Is it Downing Street saying, we don't want the president here coming, all singing, all dancing, at a time when we don't have an administration, a government here? As your listeners and viewers will know, the Democratic Unionist Party, they feel that their parity of esteem with the rest of the United Kingdom has been diminished as a result of the Sunak deal and originally by the protocol deal. And they are refusing to go into any administration. Now, the authorities at Stormont have spent months and months planning for this visit. There was an anticipation, an expectation, a hope that President Biden would be invited to Parliament buildings to address the members of the Assembly, but the Democratic Unionist Party will have nothing to do with going back into the Assembly on the grounds of their allegation or charge that the European Court of Justice is the superior court when it comes to trade in Northern Ireland. Now, that is perfectly understandable that the European Court would have jurisdiction here because Northern Ireland, unlike the rest of Britain, has remained within the single market. That's the facility and perceived advantage afforded us because we are bordering a land border with Europe. So that's why we don't have administration. But I have a feeling that Downing Street hollowed this visit out. Blink and you'll miss this visit. 1 hour, 1.5 hours, the president will be on the campus of Ulster University, and then he heads south. There is something strange about this, and he will of course, express his aspiration that an administration will be established and the peace will continue. But it's been called, in terms of the meeting between Joe Biden and Rishi Sunak, it's been described in the American publications as a bilateral. Now that suggests to me a very diminished, hollowed out visit here.
Except, I'll put this to you. There is another American president, another Democratic American president in Belfast today, and he will make an address to Queen's University today. Could he, Mr. Bill Clinton, or indeed Hillary Clinton, steal the show?
Well, there's no doubt about it that there will be a lot of attention focusing on the Clintons because they were so centrally involved. Bill Clinton was critical in the final hours of the Good Friday Agreement, personally ringing David Trimble when he was in a deep, deep hole, organised by Tony Blair. And Mr. Clinton also called Gerry Adams. And David Trimble, who was a rather intractable type of individual, but he liked the little stardust on his shoes when the president called. I remember in the early hours, and I remember David Trimble's aides coming out and in whispered tones saying, "Oh, the president called the leader," and that did the trick. So Bill Clinton was very involved. But this visit, comparable to the great heady days of the Clintons' visit, this is just a flash in the pan as far as I could see.
It's been pared back. Eamonn Malley, good to get your thoughts this morning. Thanks very much indeed. And I suppose the sense is really, thank you, that the president cannot wait really to get across the border into Ireland.
He's got a lot of family to see.
And meet some of his family. And I believe he's off to make a short trip to County Louth, where I believe his great-great-grandfather Owen Finnegan was born in the 19th century.
So the president plans on exploring more of his Irish lineage.
Of course, he did do that when he was vice president, didn't he? He came over and he met with lots of his relations.
He did. He loves a
He's
bit
doing
of
it again.
fiddly-dee. But here now, let's see the resemblance. The fifth cousin, OK? So she's a cousin 5 times removed from Joe Biden. It's like looking in a mirror. It's a spitting image. Andrea McKevitt, good morning to you.
Morning, Eamonn. How are you?
We're very good, Andrea. Andrea. Now, listen, you're not promised that you'll get to meet him, but what are your chances of meeting him?
Look, I don't know what our chances are today, but I think regardless, it's going to be a wonderful day for us here in the Cooley Peninsula and in County Louth to have a president come and spend a few hours with us. It's just going to be immense.
Okay,
Goodness me.
great.
I mean, he has so many relations, distant relations in Ireland, and unsurprising, I suppose, really, if you go back far enough. I mean, you were saying, how many cousins do you have?
Oh, hundreds.
Hundreds of cousins. I mean, is it something of a thing in Ireland to try and claim some familial link to the president?
I honestly think that Joe Biden's connections to Louth and Mayo are very genuine. And, he has done the genealogy himself and the history's there to prove it. I don't think there's anything fake about this relationship, which I think is a really good thing. He is probably, as most people have quoted him, the most Irish president since JFK, and he really is. And, the fact he's coming back here and spending 3 days in our country, it's a great sign.
See, there's a lovely thing. I'm looking at the sun coming through your window and bathed on your face. And I'm thinking that's good. That's a good sign, because there's this storm Anthony, which is all over all of us. And I thought it might have ruined the day. But does it look as if it's going to be a good day in your part of the world?
We had a lot of rain last night and wind, unfortunately. But I think there was a lot of Childs of Prague out throughout the peninsula. So hopefully they've worked. And the sun is shining this morning. So hopefully that stays true for later on today.
So are there a lot of stars and stripes and banners and things about?
Yeah, look, there's loads of American flags and Irish flags up everywhere. We've great pride in today. There's lots of different events planned. There's children drawing posters and, people getting their faces painted. And I've got my badge here, my cousin Joe badge. Like, it's just, everyone's gone a bit crazy about the prospect of meeting the president today, or at least having him on the streets in Dundalk.
Because, Eamonn, you were reminiscing with me yesterday as we were driving home from work about how when you were growing up, people would come back from the States and it was this huge excitement, welcoming a son home.
JFK, I mean, going back to the 60s when JFK visited Ireland as well, it was absolutely amazing. And are you hoping that Joe will bring some of that magic? We all love things American in Ireland. We do, generally. But did you think Joe will bring a bit of stardust to Louth?
Yeah, I think it's going to be like a big family reunion today when he gets back to Louth, I think. And there's a real sense of euphoria already and a great buzz about Carlingford and in Dundalk. So I can't even imagine what it's going to be like later on when he finally touches down. Is there any concern, genuinely,
About President Biden? I mean, we talk about it quite often on the programme that, he's 80 now and he's insisting that he will run again at the next election. He certainly doesn't look as perky as he did when he was vice president, if I can put it that way. Is that some talk about that at all?
I don't think so. I think we're all here in Ireland, and especially in County Louth and Mayo, we're all backing President Biden for 2024. And we're looking forward, hopefully, to supporting him in his campaign. It's a big year next year. We have local elections here in County Louth for myself and President Biden for the White House. So, it's a big family affair.
And what do you do, Andrea? Are you in politics?
I'm a county councillor here in Louth, and I represented in Duck Hurling.
Oh, that'll do you a lot of good to be photographed with Joe then, Uncle Joe. What would you plan? What would you plan to say to him if you get a chance to shake his hand or have your picture taken with him? What will you say to him?
I think I'll say thank you for coming home, Joe. Thanks for, putting Louth on the map and presenting us on this global stage today, which we never could have done really. We've had great access to the whole world, and everyone's going to see Louth and the Cooley Peninsula for the beautiful part of the world that we are living in.
Well, that's lovely. You enjoy the day, soak it up, soak up the sunshine, and I hope you get that selfie.
Thanks so much.
Thank you
so much. Thank
you
so much.
to the Cooley Peninsula?
No.
No, me neither.
No, well, there you
lovely,
go.
the way
But I
she
love that
described
Andrea's got the political
The
wave
royal
right there.
wave,
She's got the
fabulous.
wave right there. She's no wonder she's in politics there. Andrea McKevitt is the 5th cousin of Joe Biden.
I wonder how many 5th cousins he's got. Genuinely wonder.
I think a lot. I think a lot.
What's a lot? 40?
I think there'll be a lot of people saying, "I'm your cousin as well, Joe."
How do they
yes,
check?
Joe.
Do they have to do DNA tests or?
Well, you just say your cousin. Look, the amount of people
spit in
I
a cup
go,
or something.
Sure, you're related to me, Eamonn, aren't you, Amma? Yes, you are. I'm sure didn't your
I'm pretty
father
sure we've had
and
an
my
email
father
this
go to
morning
school
of someone saying, I'm one of your cousins. Yeah.
Who was it? Who was it?
I can't find it. I'll find it before we
that's
come
good.
back.
18 minutes past 7. Good morning to you. We're all family here on GB News Breakfast. Eamonn and Isabel with you until 9:30.
Let's bring you up to date with the rest of today's top stories. Police have launched an investigation after the Confederation of British Industry dismissed their boss, Tony Danker, over misconduct claims. The trade body faces allegations of a toxic workplace culture, with 3 other employees also being suspended.
He's from Belfast as well. Winds of up to 60 miles an hour. They've hit Britain overnight. Unsettled weather expected over the coming days. Yellow weather warnings for wind and rain in place until lunchtime. The Met Office warning people may have to deal with difficult road conditions. So if you have a high-sided vehicle, be very, very careful. The rain is going to flood down as well.
England's women's football team has ended their 30-game unbeaten run after losing 2-0 to Australia last night. The Lionesses' boss, Serena Wiegman, says she hasn't been focused on the streak and that the team just wants to win every game. Now,
Yes.
Paul Coit, we've switched his slot to 20 past 8. Lots of people have been messaging me on social media saying, where's Paul? Don't worry, we still have him, but he comes in at 20 past 8. So if you want to hear more about the Lionesses that we were just talking about there, he'll have an update for us in about an hour's time.
They'll all be Paul's cousins. They'll be his cousins and what's
All his
happening
cousins
to
go,
our
where's Paul?
20
Well, he doesn't
past
have an
8.
Irish accent.
20 past 8 is
Quite
his
a
new
bit.
slot. Up next, we'll be asking if landlords should be able to ask their tenants for CVs, not sort of recommendations, but a whole CV. Yeah, so maybe you are a landlord, maybe that's difficult for you, maybe it's easy for you. Who do you want, if you had a house to rent, how careful would you be about who lived in it? You see, that would be me. I would be very worried about who actually would be there and would they love my property? Would they look after it? But are landlords entitled to do that? Talking about landlords and tenants after this.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories. Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
24 minutes past the hour. A very good morning to you. Still to come in today's programme.
Helping children with their homework may not be beneficial for their development, according to a new study. At 7:45, we'll ask if parents should be more hands-off.
No, there should be no homework. It should be banned. There he is, Eric Haaland there, 8:20. Latest from the Champions League. City did superbly well last night. Bayern Munich, they walloped 3-0. And they are closer to the semi-finals of the Champions League.
And if you are one of Eamonn's cousins, we do want to hear from you again this morning. I can't find the email. I've got one of the team rifling through all the hundreds of emails we've had. I'm sure one of your cousins has emailed in this morning.
OK, we'll take your word for it.
gbnews@gbnews.uk.
This is an interesting one. We're talking about property, and renters are being asked and faced with extreme vetting procedures by landlords, with some demanding that tenants provide a CV or links to profiles on social media.
Well, with rental market conditions at their worst to date, are these demands fair? We're joined by the Director of Partnerships at Total Landlord Insurance, Paul Champlina, and also star of the former programme Nightmare Tenants, Slum Landlords. Welcome to the programme.
Thank you.
Look, it's tough out there for renters. They don't need to be handing in CVs and photographs to try and win over a room in a house.
You know what? It's the toughest it's ever been in the private rental sector. You know, demand is up 50%, stock has dwindled 35%, you've got landlords leaving the sector. The average rent in London is £2,400 a month. It is really, really tough. And
that again,
the average rent in London, Eamonn, is £2,400 a month.
Average?
Average rent.
So on rental alone, let me sort of do the math. So that's 24,000 and... that's a lot. That's about
that's
30
a
grand.
lot
about 30
of
grand
money
a year.
And wage growth is not matching. It's the hardest it's ever been for tenants. Let's be really, really clear for that in that. And the sense that I spoke to one letting agent. This is not common practice, by the way. Be very clear about this. But there's some agents out there that have been asking for tenants to put their best foot forward, which is a bit like a CV or their LinkedIn profile. And actually, the game of renting has changed, especially when you are now trying to play for properties. But there's a shortage.
What's your LinkedIn profile got to do with
I think
renting capacity?
Well, I tell you what it is. The landlords make an informed decision that can tenants pay the rent? And is there affordability? And actually, affordability now has gone up to the worst it's ever been, which is 39% of someone's wages goes towards rent. It's never been like that.
There's ways of checking whether someone can afford things. You ask for bank statements or whatever it might be, but you don't... Is it not just a chance to be snobby? Have a look and go, oh, I'm going to choose somebody who I think's got the best job or is the best looking or, you know, they've got...
But I suppose what Paul's saying is if you're landed with a tenant who's not paying their bills, what's the worst that can happen?
Well, the worst can happen, I know, because I run a business called Landlord Action, and we help landlords with problem tenants, and it can take the best part of 6 to 12 months to get a tenant out of your property if they're not paying the rent. Let's be very clear, there's some really... Most tenants out there are great tenants and are paying the rent on time and under more stress than ever before, especially with electricity and gas bills going up 66% and food bills going up 20%. But coming back to your point, there is referencing, there is affordability, OK, to make sure that the tenants can pay their rent. A landlord now is in a good position in the sense that they've got so many tenants vying for their property, they want to make the best informed decision. So if a tenant is putting their best foot forward, as said in The Guardian, they want to make sure that, is that tenant working at the workplace they say they're going to be working at? And can there be discrimination? I think there most probably could be discrimination upon that as well. But let's be very clear, it's not a common practice. And I think most probably it's more so a London-centric thing rather than the rest of the country.
The competition is really hot. Because we've seen it in the private owning market, that people would be going to sealed bids and submitting letters with photographs of their children and trying to sell themselves to prospective sellers because they want to distinguish themselves from other buyers. And now I suppose...
But I think that the psyche of tenants has to change as well, you know. The problem is 92% of searches for a property are done online. A tenant is driven by the property, not by their landlord or by their letting agent. And the affordability issue is quite something... I think when it comes to... I mean, I heard one story of a work colleague that was advising a tenant. She was vying for a property, I think it was near Richmond, and there was over 110 tenants vying for this one property. She gave her some advice because she's in the industry. She put her best foot forward, explained why she's a good tenant. Obviously, you have to get a previous landlord's reference as well, which is really important to make sure that if you've been renting, have you been keeping the property in a good state? Yeah. Are you giving me access? Have you not been trashing the property? And she actually got the property. She actually got the property out of 120 people.
Wow, OK.
See, I wouldn't be a good landlord because I'd be too personal about it. I mean, I would be treating it as if it is my home, my possession that someone's living in.
Well, that's a really good point, Eamonn. Look, 85% of landlords out there have between 1 and 3 properties, and a lot of them have owned a property and moved elsewhere. And, you know, whether you treat this as a business, at the end of the day, let's remember one thing. Your tenant is your customer. They're paying most of their money towards the rent and your income. And actually, you know, most landlords out there do manage properties really well. They get themselves in a problem trying to manage, and there's over 175 rules and regulation in renting out a property. That's why they should use an accredited letting agent.
So the long and the short of it is, and you give the figures for London, it's very, very tough out there and very, very expensive out there. And I don't know if Leeds is any different, if Aberdeen's any different after that.
Everything's gone up.
Yeah.
Everything's gone up. It's tough out there, as Isabel says. What is your view off the market and how much tougher is it going to get? I mean, I constantly have this disbelief that central government and local authorities will not invest in social housing. I just think it's terrible. So you rely on private landlords and then people criticise private landlords.
You've answered your own question. We have a severe lack of social housing. We've had years and decades of... I think, was it 2 years ago, we built 6,000 social houses in a population of 70 million. And now there's been more pressure on the private rental sector at 20%. So that is the answer. The biggest losers in all this will most probably be vulnerable tenants, because don't forget, they're also abolishing a notice called a Section 21, a non-fault notice, which means that landlords are going to be much more stringent when it comes to referencing. And those tenants that are on benefits And don't forget, the LHA rates, the local housing allowance rates, aren't going up until 2024. They're going to be big losers, because if you've got private tenants vying for a property with a housing benefit tenant, and a private tenant can pay £400 or £500 a month more, and then, of course, we have a temporary housing accommodation crisis. It's a nightmare.
Nightmare, OK.
So many factors
Thank
to
you,
it.
Paul.
Yeah,
Appreciated that. Paul Champlina is Director of Partnerships at Total Landlord Insurance. Thank you very much indeed.
Now, stay with us. We'll be telling you about the current phone theft epidemic. One's getting stolen every 6 minutes in London. David Mellor and Scarlett Maguire share their thoughts next.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back at 7:35. Time to take a look at today's front pages.
This is the time focusing on Joe Biden's arriving in Belfast last night as he vows to make Northern Irish peace his priority.
The Mail's pointing the finger at the leader of England's Junior Doctors' Union, who's gone on holiday during the most disruptive strike in NHS history.
The Eye says the world economy is in peril as the UK heads for the worst growth in the G7.
The Metro reveal a phone theft epidemic as they say thieves are stealing a handset every 6 minutes in London.
And the Mirror, they say the King's coronation has been plunged into turmoil because the rehearsals overran. The King nearly tripped over his gown.
Is that what they're saying?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, I hadn't read that bit.
What, do you think I made that up? Do you think I sit and make this up?
Just the way you sounded.
What about a proper story? The King says he won't go ahead with the coronation. He doesn't want to be king after all, you know.
Well,
yeah, we are making things up. Right, let's start, shall we, with President Biden. And this isn't actually in relation to his trip. David, you've chosen a story in The Times about Biden, but not about the Windsor framework or anything happening in Northern Ireland, but actually about revelations of a mass leak of defence documents.
Yes, this is quite worrying, actually. I mean, The Times devote a page and a half to it, which is quite a lot. And basically what they're saying is that a whole host of extremely sensitive relationships, like Ukraine and the United States, like, indeed, the Israelis, and the attitude of Mossad to some of these changes that Netanyahu wants to make, the allegation being that Mossad don't want to have anything to do with what Netanyahu is trying to do, which, of course, will be a good thing. But an awful lot of this stuff appears to suggest that major revelations are coming out, and the Americans, who are often quite sanctimonious if they think that their interests are not being protected, apparently have no way of getting to the bottom of this. And while a lot of people say, well, it's great, we know what really happens, there are times when you don't really want to know what really happens.
But throughout my adult life, the Americans have been famous for leaking like a sieve, haven't they? I mean, we've always worried about the Americans getting hold of information because it goes places. Isn't that true, David?
Yes, that is certainly true. But, I mean, the scale of this should, you know, while Biden's having some good crack and his 6 pints of Guinness, what he's going to do in Ireland, he should be giving a little bit of thought to this. Because, you know, this is The Times, a page and a half. That's a lot. Drip feed of top-secret US leaks puts leaders on alert. This is going back to the bad old days of those leaks that came from various Wikipedia, if you remember.
I think it's WikiLeaks.
WikiLeaks.
It was Julian Assange. And, but I mean...
Just to make sure you were awake.
Yeah.
I think mistake. And you were awake, and I congratulate you on that.
because I listened to every word that you say.
Oh, Scarlett,
golden
what
word.
Say, the Guardian, front page of the Guardian, they're talking about the CBI and an investigation by police into sexual misconduct there.
Well, I mean, what's so shocking about this story is it's the Confederation of British Industry that only because the Guardian started listening to the women who worked there talking about their allegations of sexual misconduct did it get anywhere. It's been going on for a while. Tony Danker, who until yesterday was the chief executive, has been fired with no notice. And what's so weird is he goes, but I didn't really think I was doing anything wrong. And you thought, what century does this guy live in? I mean, you know, to say, oh, but I was just being nice and I was being sort of touchy-feely or whatever he might say. And it's absolutely right that the CBI have got rid of him. Interestingly, they've got a woman to take over, which they would, but she was around when all this was happening. But some of the so-called victims say, actually, she was good and they trust her to turn the organisation around. But it shows how important these things are, because this isn't just about even a police investigation. I mean, there are an awful lot. I mean, the CBI runs on membership, and there's a lot of organisations who go, we don't want to give any money, and the government is refusing to meet them.
Bring back Digby Jones. Remember Digby Jones?
Yes, I remember Digby Jones.
You know, and suddenly there was this great pillar of responsibility, and now you end up with Tony Danker.
Well, Digby Jones
Change is
last
not
seen
always
with
for the
a lot
best.
of facial hair. He'd gone all sort of native and gone sort of on Castaway Island, hadn't he? And was living in the sun. I don't know what he was up to, but anyway, maybe he's back in town.
No, he lives in the Channel Island.
Does he?
OK, talking about the Channel, we go to the Daily Mail, page 8. A cross-channel ferry being forced to change route by a French warship. Why, David?
Well, this is actually, I've got to tell you, a truly outrageous story. So this happened on Easter Sunday, and a cross-channel ferry was invited, told to change course so that the French warship could take a couple of boats filled with illegal immigrants to hand them over to the British
authorities.
Yes.
And but why is that such an issue?
Well, because what we're supposed to be doing here is the French are supposed to be assisting us. We're paying them money. And what is the priority in a world's busiest sea lane to have a French warship in apparently fog and bad weather prioritising getting this lot from France to the UK? No wonder we'll never, 1,000 people arrived over this weekend. We're never going to be able to get on top of it if it appears that the French are actually very keen just to help them. And the problem is, if we can't do a deal with the French, it's not going to be really possible to stop it. And all this stuff, we always get this thing, Macron and Rishi Sunak got a great relationship and all that. Well, so much for great relationship.
But maybe this was a pure safety issue, and to ask a ferry to, go a bit to port, is that really such a big problem?
No, but what they should be doing is, there's another possibility which you will have thought of. Why not take them back to France?
But David, I mean, if it was the other way round, would you want to keep people here who wanted to leave? No, you don't. I mean, if you were French, you think, right, the people who want to leave France, let them leave. I mean, that's...
Yeah.
And
but
so
if they
it
all
does
come here,
become
that's
a
not
safe...
such a clever idea, is it? Or is it? I don't know.
Well, if you're Macron, does it matter? Right? I mean, do you want people in your country who are queuing up and risking their lives to go to another country, and you think, let them go? It's fine.
I think that's probably what he does think. The problem is, it's not very good for us. And, of course, it's extremely bad for the credibility of the British government, which cannot deal with this. No one expects them to solve the issues relating to, I don't know, Russia and world peace or international profound economic problems. But they should be able to stop this.
But, I mean, you say that sort of almost ridiculing them, but has any country managed to control this problem?
Well, I think the Americans have done a pretty good job.
Building a wall.
Well, I don't mean a wall, but it was a whole host of things. But the reality is, look, the ordinary punter, i.e. the ordinary Joe in the street, me, we're now going to think, aren't we, that this government, if they can't even sort out stopping 1,000 people in a weekend arriving on beaches, what can they do? What's the point? What use are they,
Scarlett, we've been highlighting this throughout the programme, the huge amount of mobile phone thefts in London, one every 360 seconds.
Yes, and quite frightening, actually. I remember, I literally, I was walking along a street and a cyclist was on the pavement, and suddenly a young woman screamed, and the cyclist had just taken the phone out of her hand. And that's the danger, is that what they do is they'll be on bicycles or there'll be two on a motorbike, and they see somebody on the phone and they just take it. And it's very few get reported. Some people have insurance, some people don't. And nobody's doing anything
Well,
about
goodness me, if your car gets stolen, nothing's done about it. If your phone's gone, I don't know why you'd even expect any recourse at all.
Absolutely.
Which is just, it's lawless, really.
What I'd love to know is what happens to the phone. So someone steals...
What use are they?
Yes. So someone steals your phone, it's got your info on it, whatever it is. Are they interested in your info, or are they just interested in selling your phone to
Probably
me?
both. It's all got a value.
Well, I think it can be shut down, the info, or at least... a lot of it can be. But what I find extraordinary is, a phone is no use unless there's a contract that allows you to make calls and all the rest of it.
That can be the battery, it can be the SIM, it can be whatever it might be, I don't know.
But, a friend of mine who's useless left his phone in Pret, and he had Find My Phone, and he watched the phone go to East Acton, told the police exactly where it was. As you say, Nothing happened. Absolutely nothing.
No, so he was able to phone and say, right, this is where my phone is. It's been stolen.
Yep.
And they just basically said, yeah, look, we're
I'd
too
have been
busy.
tempted to go myself, but that's probably not advisable. David, since we have a former Chief Secretary to the Treasury, can I ask you about the story in the front of the Telegraph about leaders racing to prevent a new banking crisis, not biking crisis? I know it's not in our list, but I do want to just talk about it because it's a huge story, this one. I think if President Biden wasn't in the United Kingdom, we'd be talking a bit more about it.
Yeah.
Jeremy Hunt's over there, Andrew Bailey from the Bank of England is over there, and it certainly seems as though they're really worried about interest rates, inflation and pressure building in the global financial...
Of course, pressure is building. It particularly affects us because we're going to have, so they say, you never know whether they're right, the IMF says the worst economic performance of any of the G20 countries. And what it also suggests is that the idea of the G20 is not that people meet together and drink too much at various weekend gatherings. They're supposed to be working together to prevent any kind of economic meltdown. Well, there's plenty of evidence that that isn't happening.
Any thoughts on the situation?
I mean, it's really frightening because on the one hand, you sort of talk about it globally, and on the other hand, we know that in this country, lots and lots of people still can't afford to pay their heating bills. And to know that next year is going to be just as bad is just terrible.
Well, also, we just had a segment on renting. We didn't even get on to some of the implications for that, but we know that the mortgage market is, more and more people are thinking, well, you know what, we're just going to rent because we can't afford a mortgage because of the situation financially. And there are just so many implications to these crises, aren't there?
Yeah, I mean, homelessness is going to go up. Far, far more, she says. Children are going to come home and be living... I mean, it's sort of like not a proper grown-up country anymore because nobody the 30-year-olds can't afford to grow up. Their wages don't keep pace. I mean, he was absolutely right about how high rents are and how difficult it is.
What are we growing up for, Scarlett? The front page of the Star today talking about artificial intelligence. There'd be nothing for us to look forward to, no jobs to do. This one particularly, I saw last night on the news...
a newsreader, the Q80 one.
Yeah, and I thought, well, they can't replace us. How could they replace us? But they can, right? So they just get an artificial, what would you call it? Bot that sits and...
Looks like Eamonn. Smiles rather more often.
They just type in a script and it moves its mouth to the script. And
the suggestion is that Liverpool can be managed by artificial intelligence, or I've always thought it has been, but no, but it's, basically, while a lot of this is done tongue-in-cheek, it is quite frightening.
I think it's quite serious.
Actually, I think it's really... I mean, a young friend of mine who's a barrister thinks he's got less than 10 years.
Really?
Yeah, but because it's. I mean, actually, while I was away, I was talking to a solicitor about ChatGPT, and he was saying that as an employment person, that actually ChatGPT can give you basic stuff. Within 10 years, they're going to be things like lawyers, where most of it is about research and then how to use research
I actually
properly.
think, one of the things, bear with me on this tangent, but with the pandemic, we saw young people going in on themselves and not mixing so much because they're all on their screens. I know that the AI world is also mixing with the dating world. People are having these dating relationships, the rise of porn. We've seen teenage pregnancies go down dramatically. I can see AI having a huge implications on human-to-human relations, genuinely. And I think if someone like Elon Musk turns around and says, guys, I think we should actually pause on all developments in AI whilst we just take stock for a minute, we should probably listen.
Spooky, scary. Guys, thank you. We've been listening to David Miller and Scarlett Maguire for the past 15 minutes or so, and they'll be back again just after 8:30. Until then, thank you both very much indeed. Social class matters more than the amount of time you as a parent will spend helping your child with homework.
Yes, a new study shows 7-year-olds who received daily help with maths from their parents had only a 1.8% increased chance of being assessed as above average.
But it found having parents from a high socioeconomic class doubles that chance. Joined us now, former Special Advisor at the Department for Education, Mark Lehane. Mark, good morning. I'm not really surprised. Should I be surprised by this?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it's an interesting study based on what I've seen so far, but it largely supports what we already know and what other research has shown, which is family context seems to be the best indicator as to how a child is going to do at school. And there's a couple of ways you can look at that. You can think, well, I'm going to throw my hands up in the air and not worry about it if it doesn't make any difference. But actually, there's a really positive way to look at that, which is that the most important thing parents can do is to stop worrying about what they do with their children and do the good stuff they want to do with them anyway. Read your child, take them out to museums, do fun stuff with them. They love being with their parents anyway. And then work closely with school to make sure that they turn up every day and they're doing their best at school.
So, Mark, what would your advice be to someone then? Because there might be people watching and listening who are from what's not deemed a high socio-economic household, whatever that means, and will be thinking, well, hang on, my kid's chances are rubbish. Is there anything those parents can do, as you say, besides just kind of reading and loving and making sure your child attends school? Is there nothing that they can do to help their kids to have a better chance?
No, listen, you've raised a really good point. And anyone who's a parent who's hearing these headlines might think, well, hang on a minute, what's going on here? There's loads that any mum or dad or family or caregiver can do for their child, OK? So this study is looking at a very specific set of inputs or backgrounds, i.e. whether a parent's got a degree or how much they earn and so on, and what teachers think that child is doing at school and how they go on to do. But in terms of practical things that anyone can do to help a child get on in school, it is, as I said, those fundamental, basic, very important things that do make a difference. When they're little and even when they get older, read with them, read to them, and listen to them read to you. Help them do their homework. This study shows it doesn't make a huge difference, but any difference is worth having. And most importantly, have that close working relationship with school, because we know schools are getting really good now at narrowing the gap between children from all sorts of backgrounds. So be kind to your child at home, make sure they get plenty of sleep, read with them, do all that good stuff, and then work closely with school as they do the specific academic stuff. And don't give up. We all know that parents make a huge difference to how their children grow up, even if it doesn't show in every single academic study.
Mark, the socioeconomic difference that we're referring to there, when I was bringing up my children, it simply meant paying for tuition. There was just, you just realised you had to get tuition because everybody else who could afford it was getting tuition.
Well, listen, tuition can make a big difference. And actually, hopefully if there's parents watching this programme right now, they will know that for the first time ever, every child in England in a state school has an entitlement through their school to one-to-one or small group tuition catch-up off the back of a pandemic. We've made huge strides forwards in recent times about opening up tuition. So it's not just for those with money, but for those who need it. So yes, tuition can make a difference. And if parents want to do that, talk to their child's teachers to find out what specific things they should focus on.
Mark, good man. Got to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed. We're going to, if you've learnt geography or geology or climatology at school or something, you'll be very interested in the weather and how it works. And let's have a look at the forecast, because it's going to be a disruptive day today.
Hello there, very good morning to you. I'm Jonathan Vautry here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. We have a very windy day ahead of us, particularly if you are in western southern areas of the UK, all due to the squeeze around this area of low pressure that's going to be dominating our weather throughout Wednesday, particularly southern coastal areas of England up into southwest Wales and then Northern Ireland as well. We have the potential for 40, 50 mile an hour gusts inland, but 60 mile an hour plus along some coastal areas. That is enough to cause some travel disruption, particularly to ferries, and we could see some large waves around those coasts as well. We'll be accompanied by some quite heavy rain at times, perhaps wintry over the higher grounds of Eryri and the Pennines. Slightly drier further to the east and the north, but certainly still the risk of some showers throughout the day. Temperature is quite disappointing, around 7 to 10 degrees Celsius. Add on the strength of that wind, it's going to feel more like 2 or 4 degrees if you step outside. Into this evening, continuing to see those showery outbreaks of rain. Might ease off a bit more into Wales, southwestern areas of England as we move into the second half of the night, but still quite breezy here. The rain persisting across the north, particularly Argyll and Bute down into the Scottish borders and northern areas of England. Underneath some of those clearer intervals, we could see temperatures drop down towards 2-4 degrees Celsius, but with the breeze around, that will reduce the risk of frost for all of us. Some brightness early on Thursday for Wales, central southern areas of England, and the winds will also be easing down here a bit more as well. Still will feel slightly cold, but hopefully slightly better compared to Wednesday at least. The showers persisting in the north, and it will remain quite blustery across Northern Ireland, southern areas of Scotland and Northern England. Temperatures again hovering around 10, maybe now 12, 13 degrees Celsius in the south. Remaining quite unsettled as we head into Friday as well, perhaps drying off a bit more, particularly in the south and east for Saturday, and we'll also see those temperatures climbing back up towards 16 degrees. Bye-bye.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News, we're starting the conversation and having the debate that the establishment won't have. No one will be cancelled. Join me at 4 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday. We'll be discussing all the big topics of the weekend.
Oh, get cracking!
Always honest, always fun. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions are, those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
President Biden promises to keep the peace as he touches down in Belfast. Hello there, very good morning to you. The time is 8 o'clock on this Wednesday, 20th of April.
This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn Holmes and Isabel Webster. Here's what's leading the news this morning.
The US president has pledged to make sure the Good Friday Agreement and the Windsor Framework stay in place as he prepares for talks aimed at restoring power sharing.
Last night, he was met at the steps of Air Force One by the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak ahead of a bilateral meeting between the two leaders today.
The Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, is in Washington to meet with world leaders in a bid to avoid a new global financial crisis. It comes as the IMF forecasts suggest the UK is predicted to be the worst performing G7 economy this year.
Downing Street has ruled out talks with junior doctors unless they drop their calls for a 35% pay rise, calling the demand unreasonable. It comes amid reports the co-chair of the British Medical Association is on holiday while the walkouts are taking place.
And the King's coronation plans are reportedly in chaos due to a string of last-minute problems. With just over 3 weeks until the ceremony, insiders say that amongst the issues are an unfinished seating plan due to Harry and Meghan still not confirming their attendance. Maybe they'd like to email us this morning and say whether they're coming or
I wonder if they
not.
will just leave it to the last minute.
Do you know what? Who cares?
True that.
Who cares? Good night. Not in touch.
They'll steal
Bye-bye.
the show there. Everyone will be talking about them if they come. That's what I think is the real shame about it all. Anyway, let us know your thoughts. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
The US president has vowed to keep the peace as he prepares to meet with the leaders of Northern Ireland's main political parties today.
He was greeted last night on the steps of his private plane, the Air Force One, by the Prime Minister, who he will hold bilateral talks with later today.
What are bilateral talks? Why can't we just say hold talks? Bilateral means two, doesn't it? So the two of them
unilateral.
are going to talk.
Yeah.
Unilateral would mean what?
Just the one...
Talks to himself.
No, if you make a decision unilaterally, you're just doing it on your own. Whereas if you do bilateral talk, it's just the two of you exclusively having that chat. So, because he was supposed to be meeting with the 5 other members, other parties in Northern Ireland, and that's all been pared down. Seems to be a bit of a hollowed-out trip, people have been saying this morning.
OK. The President will also visit the University of Ulster to deliver a short speech before heading down south, across the border, into the Republic of Ireland.
Well, his visit follows 4 suspected pipe bombs being found in the city cemetery in Derry, Londonderry.
Yeah, though what's that got to do with him, we're not really sure. So 4 pipe bombs. Dougie Beattie, who's there in Belfast for us this morning, were those pipe bombs in that cemetery because there was a Republican commemoration taking place, or do we know if they were there for the Republicans to use against maybe security forces?
I think you're maybe on the right road there, Eamonn. On Monday, the PSNI were very much putting out that they were expecting trouble in Derry and at that parade in the Cregan. And paramilitary uniforms, etc., were burnt in that graveyard so as no DNA could be taken off them. And of course, on the way to that particular parade, you attacked the PSNI's monitoring situation in their snatched Land Rovers, and you can only imagine that maybe those pipe bombs were left there so as not to be, because of the earlier attack that went on, that they weren't going to face down the police with them. These pipe bombs are an improvised grenade. That's exactly what they are. And in riot situations, they would put these together. They're basically a scaffolding pole with 2 ends on them and explosives in the middle. They're used to shoot shrapnel all over the place. I have faced them in a riot myself when you went in, and when they throw these things in amongst the feet of the policemen, I mean, it does cause chaos and it can maim, but they're not a bomb in how we would think of a bomb. Definitely not the same device that we would be thinking of that would take out, say, a street here or anything else. So no, and obviously Londonderry's 100 miles away from where we are now as well, so it wouldn't be any real threat here. In fact, if anything, it's actually getting the dissidents the publicity that they're looking for without even having to throw them. So yeah, President Biden arrived here last night on Air Force One, greeted by Rishi Sunak. He arrived here in Bedford Street. It was very wet and windy, and he was only greeted by about 100 people on looking here. And he's saying today he's going to have talks with those 5 heads of parties, but then he's only having about a 20-minute speech in the new University of Ulster campus before leaving to go south of the border. The real action today will really be in and around Queen's University of those that were actually involved in the talks in 1998. We would imagine, well, Bill Clinton will be speaking on it, and we would imagine that Tony Blair might appear here somewhere along the line as well.
Right, interesting. So around you, say you're on Bedford Street there, the Grand Central Hotel behind you, that's where I presume the President is staying. What's the timetable, Dougie? What time will he be up out of bed and going to the talks or the University of Ulster? And is there any disruption there around you?
Dougie knows that. I reckon they...
Well, he'll know that he will be coming out at 9:30.
He'll be having his eggs.
They will know,
yeah, I know,
forensically what time everything will be happening at. And I noticed people being stopped and redirected behind you and around you there as well.
Yes, this street brings you right to the back of the City Hall, basically from the side of the BBC, right down in, through past the Ulster Hall, into the City Hall. So if you want to get into the centre of Belfast, this would be one of the main routes to go. And Joe Biden is expected to meet these parties here this morning, so we would imagine in the next short while that those leaders will be appearing here and walking through this cordon. Simon Byrne, the Chief Constable of Northern Ireland, was here just about 5 or 10 minutes ago inspecting the security arrangements here. He was in and around the corner as well at the old, at the new University of Ulster complex. And actually I was just sitting thinking, Eamonn, that before it was the University of Ulster complex was actually where the first assembly sat. And before that, it was the Co-op building that was then knocked down and rebuilt. So it has quite a lot of history to do with the Good Friday Agreement in and around where he is going next. But he will only be on the ground in that particular building for about 20 minutes.
Very fond memories of the Co-op. Still remember my mother's share number there. Yeah, that's very good. So will he then fly? Will he fly down south? Will he fly to Dublin or Galway or Limerick or somewhere? Or will they go on Air Force One again, or do they drive?
Well, what I believe that he's going to be helicoptered. I've been told that there's a sports pitch, a GAA pitch just over the border that has been getting set up to receive a helicopter for a very special guest. So I'd imagine that's how he's going to travel from here southward into what should be an actually lovely trip. I mean, he's going to Mayo, to Ballina. I'm very fond of Ballina. And then he's going to look for his ancestors in and around Louth before heading off again. I think he leaves on Saturday. But it is a bit of a damp squid for Northern Ireland as presidential visits go. There's no meeting of youths here, of any community groups. It is all very much it's very much an electoral campaign more for Joe Biden than it is for trying to sort anything out inside the Good Friday Agreement.
Got you, Dougie. Understand. We should also say that President and Mrs. Clinton both there in Belfast today, and they will address Queen's University today, 25 years on from the signing of that agreement. Dougie, thanks for your update. Got to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed.
Now, the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, is in Washington today to meet with world leaders in a bid to try and avoid a new global financial crisis.
The International Monetary Fund is holding spring meetings as it forecasts that the UK will be the worst performing G7 economy this year.
Well, joining us for more on this is the economics commentator Laurie Laird. And look, lots of discussion has been going around about whether or not, the IMF can be trusted in its assessment of where we rank in the G7. But I suppose perhaps more concerning to me in the headlines today is that there we have our Chancellor, we have the Governor of the Bank of England in Washington, and there seems to be real concern not just from the IMF but from other financial institutions that there are these vulnerabilities, as they term them, that we could well see ourselves facing a new global banking crisis.
Good morning to the two of you guys. It's weird to be talking to you down the line rather than the studio, but I think you're asking the right questions, Isabel. The IMF's message yesterday, I thought, was really peculiar. So they gave us some numbers, they gave us some forecasts, they downgraded their forecast for the global economy a little bit for this year and next. So downgraded the global economy, actually upgraded the UK, but put that aside for the moment. The forecast for this year and next year from the IMF are pretty good. They're not amazing. We're seeing a slowdown in growth this year from last year, but nothing that looks particularly sinister. Yet we had a press conference where the chief economist was so gloomy, and his attitude didn't seem to match up with the numbers. The IMF saying we're going into a perilous phase. We have to be very careful. And it felt like what the IMF was trying to tell us is, at the moment, everything looks okay. But if we get a worst case scenario, if we get another banking crisis, if inflation doesn't come down and interest rates have to go higher, then things could get really, really bad. But the IMF isn't so convinced things will get very, very bad that they've actually encompassed those bad things into their forecast. So IMF warning of the worst case scenario, but the numbers actually don't look that worrying.
OK, so they're being a bit gloomy. What sort of mood music do you expect to see from Andrew Bailey? He's giving 2 speeches today.
Good, you're well on top of this stuff. Absolutely. 2 speeches today from Andrew Bailey. We've got Hugh Pill, the chief economist, speaking tomorrow to a UK audience. And people are really poised to see what Andrew Bailey has to say. We know that the MPC, the Monetary Policy Committee, is really split about what to do about interest rates. Some of the members want to keep rates where they are. Some are saying that we need to have rates coming a bit higher. Certainly, inflation is much, much higher than it's meant to be. We're still over 10% here in the UK. And even more concerningly for people who set interest rates is not so much that headline inflation. They look at what's called core inflation. That takes out food, takes out energy. And that sounds a little bit weird, right? You take out food and energy. Well, what else do we pay for? But they're trying to get a sense of whether food and energy, whether that inflation is spreading wider through the economy. And that is going higher. If that isn't a concern to policymakers, to my mind, it really should be. But yeah, let's see if Andrew Bailey gives us a steer as to what's going to happen next. The other thing to keep an eye out for, Isabel, is GDP numbers for February are out tomorrow. We did pretty well in January, up 0.3%. We'll see what February has to show us tomorrow, and that'll give us a sense of whether we avoided a contraction in the first quarter. It could be that the IMF, as you mentioned, the IMF has underestimated the UK performance consistently. Not only the IMF, the OBR, the Office for Budget Responsibility, the Bank of England, these agencies have been consistently underestimating the UK performance. Some of the numbers we've seen recently do not look all that scary.
So maybe the takeaway from all of this is that all the forecasts are generally a little bit wrong. We just have to wait and see.
No, we're in an odd phase right now. We really are. Interest rates rising, inflation high. We really are in a phase where people don't quite know what they're looking at.
Absolutely. Well, it's always good to get your take anyway. Laurie Laird, appreciate your time. Thanks very much indeed. Well, continuing the theme of sort of financial pressures, really, soaring childcare costs are forcing a quarter of parents in Britain to give up their job or to drop out of education, according to a new study. In a survey of several countries, UK parents were the most likely to find it hard to meet childcare costs, with a record 74% saying they found it challenging. Well, joining us now to discuss this is the editorial director of Net Mums, Jennifer Howes. Good morning to you, Jennifer.
Good morning.
Interesting the way we describe that as parents, but are we predominantly in all of this, unfortunately, still talking about mothers and women?
Yes, predominantly it is women who look after children and that are impacted by the cost of childcare and therefore have to scale back their jobs or give up their jobs or education. Especially when you consider, because of the wage gap, that if both parents work, the man probably makes more.
Right. So it's often the women that decide to stay home because of those huge childcare costs. Look, we talked about it on the programme last month when the Chancellor announced his spring budget, and there was much excitement from many organisations like yours with people saying, wow, for the first time the government's recognising that actually childcare needs to begin from 9 months and not 3 years. So there's this extension of the 30 hours of free childcare for those age brackets, obviously being phased in over several years. But how much of a change will that be to this problem that's been identified in the report, do you think?
Well, I think the biggest change is that it's an acknowledgement that childcare, it's infrastructure, really. It's not a nice to have, that it's part of the economy. It unlocks huge amounts of value and earning power for families. All that money goes right back into the economy via taxes or, spending on food, mortgages, rent, et cetera. So the fact that we're actually starting to talk about childcare is not something that parents have to kind of sort out themselves or cobble together with nurseries and childminders and nannies and au pairs and family members is, I think, one of the biggest steps or one of the biggest impacts of that.
So we were just discussing how the IMF said that we in the UK are the worst performing major economy in terms of growth.
Yes.
And would you say it's no surprise then, given that we're also charging the highest childcare? Maybe if we want to improve growth, we should try and make it easier for parents, predominantly women, to get back to work.
Well, yes. I was reading a study, PricewaterhouseCoopers did a study where it showed that there's 177 billion pounds of value that could be unlocked if we had the same amount of women working as in Sweden, where there is there's a much better childcare provision from a very early age. So, I mean, that's an annual amount. I think this is something that parents have known for a long time.
Do you think, though, it's just about necessarily giving the childcare sort of help and bringing the costs down? Or is it a question of looking at those ratios, the numbers of children that are looked after? I mean, do you have strong views on how many adults should be looking after small children? Because certainly in different countries, they have different models to what we allow legally here. Even I think Scotland's different from England.
Yeah, this is a big point of debate. It's a big point of debate on net mums. But I think the big thing is that we have to realize looking after small children, it is time intensive, it's labor intensive. You know, these are little people, they need care, they need education. We're socializing them. We're basically laying a foundation for them to be kind of good citizens. And that we can't kind of skimp on that by trying to pay as little as possible and, you know, not worry about who's looking after them or not worry about how they kind of fit into the bigger picture. Because nurseries also, you think about this, you know, we've lost 5,000 childcare providers this year alone. So you have these, you have fewer number of providers out there.
And more demand.
More demand. Yeah. There is concern. There were a lot of conversations, I think, in the wake of what the Chancellor was saying is, this is great that there's going to be, you know, they're offering more places.
It's just going to increase demand. And how on earth are we supposed to do that? Yeah, no, I mean...
Especially like near me, where am I going to find the childcare provider who's going to give me those hours?
Well, certainly there's a lot of work still to be done on it. Really interesting to get your take on it. Jennifer Howes is the editorial director at Ned Mums. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much.
Now, Downing Street has ruled out talks with junior doctors unless they drop their calls for a 35% pay rise, calling the demand unreasonable. It comes amid reports that the co-chair of the BMA is actually on holiday whilst the talks are taking place. Well, let's go to our South West of England reporter, Jeff Moody, who's at a hospital in Weston-super-Mare. Good morning to you, Jeff. Bring us up to date.
Good morning. Well, they're saying this could be the most disruptive week in NHS history. We've heard that several times before, haven't we? But what is new about this week is we're now hearing that some services are under serious threat, particularly here at the Western General Hospital in Weston-super-Mare, where the NHS has asked 7 of the junior doctors that are behind me on the picket line to return to work today. Now, the NHS does have contingency plans that if they feel that they cannot cope sufficiently during these strike times, they can tell people, order people not to strike. And that's what's happened here. The BMA said yesterday protecting patient safety during strikes has always been a priority for the BMA. However, poor planning by local management has left the emergency department and acute medicine at Western General Hospital exposed. So as a result, the BMA has agreed that a total of 7 junior doctors are being asked to volunteer to return to work today. So a black mark against Western in some ways because they weren't as prepared for the strike as they should have been. But the other thing that makes this a bit more murky is that the doctors, the junior doctors here, don't have to tell their bosses whether or not they're going on strike until the very last moment. So that makes planning for these strikes extremely difficult. And that's what we're seeing up and down the country this week. Real difficulties in getting the staff up to the correct levels in some hospitals.
OK, Jeff Moody, thank you very much indeed for that.
Right, stay with us. We will go to the break. After that, Paul Coit looks at the action from Champions League last night. Man City 3-0 winners over Bayern Munich.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel. Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories. Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Just looking ahead at what we've got for you on our little programme this morning. Stranger Things actress Millie Bobby Brown has announced she's getting married to boyfriend Jake Bon Jovi. Right? So we're asking, she's 19, is that too young to get married? And I reckon the older you are, the younger you will have been when you tied the knot. So what's your experience of life? What do you think about when is it right? If you feel love, when should you give in to it?
Yeah? Are you asking me, or we'll get onto that in a minute?
I think if you're in love, you're in love. It doesn't matter if you're 17
My parents married at 21, and I'd say they've got a great marriage and absolute marriage goals, so it can work. But I think if I was married, I didn't know who I was at 19. I think I was still a child pretty much until I was about 30. I think we stayed
and you
young
wouldn't have had
longer.
Anybody that would have wanted to marry you anyway. So that
well, certainly would have wanted to marry my boyfriend
so
at the time.
what happens when the boyfriend comes along who is the one, and your body clock's ticking and ever, that influences you, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, I was like trying to lock down my hubby from about 26.
Yeah.
It's like TikTok. It's like, crikey. Anyway. Right. They're currently touring the country. At 9:15, we're going to speak to the Strictly Professionals and real-life couple Kai and Nadia about taking their romance out on the road.
What do you mean are they romantic in real life?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah. It's Dan Walker's partner, remember?
Yeah, I know Nadia.
Oh, right,
yes. Okay. Nadia has a sort of torch for me.
Does she? Well, apparently you shouldn't bring that up. She's on with her boyfriend in a little bit.
I don't want him to have to talk to him as well.
I'm afraid so.
Oh, for goodness sake.
He might be Pasado blowing you out
All
the way.
that to come. Right, Champions League action last night. This reflected on the back pages. They think it's all over. This is the Star. And the Norwegian giant scored again as Man City put Bayern to bed 3-0 last night. That was in Manchester at the Etihad. Guardian focuses on the win as well, but they also report Liverpool pulled out of the race to sign Jude Bellingham. So they're saying. And finally in the Metro, prove him wrong. Chelsea interim manager Frank Lampard calling on his team to silence the critics as they take on Real Madrid tonight. Where are they doing that? Are they doing that in London or Madrid?
No, it's in Madrid.
In Madrid, oh.
I was going to say, I don't know what's best if they're playing in London first or Madrid first, but it doesn't really make much difference, to be honest with you.
No. I suppose it is better if you get the second leg at home.
It is generally. But the thing is, Chelsea going away to Real Madrid and the way Chelsea have been horrible, haven't they, recently? And they're playing Real Madrid, who are the holders. And Frank Lampard's now taken over, and nobody seems to be able to get a tune out of them. There's some expensive players there, but it just is not working.
No.
And you fear for them to go over to Real Madrid. I mean, you saw David Mellor was shaking today. Did you see how nervous he looked? It was nothing to do with you. That's because of what's happening tonight. But they're in trouble tonight, so anything can happen in football. But
Man City not in trouble. I mean, that is some win against Bayern.
Bayern Munich 3-0, no messing around. I thought they were terrific yesterday.
Yeah.
And there's that thing about Man City where they come good towards the end of the season. I bet Arsenal saw that and thought, blimey, this could be tricky. But Champions League, it's the thing they want more than anything else. Whether they admit it or not, it's what they want. Because everybody always asks Pep about Champions League this, Champions League that. But they need to win it, and they will never get a better chance again. I know we always say that, but I thought they were brilliant.
And what about the Lionesses last night? They lost their 30 match
run. Unbeaten in 30.
Record,
Serena Wiegmann, as the manager, is unbeaten until now. So they played Australia in Brentford yesterday.
Are Australia any good?
Australia are 10th in the world, so they're not as good as we are. But I really, honestly, do not have a problem with this. I think it could even be a good thing. I always look at the bright side. The defence, there were some injuries as far as the Lionesses are concerned. But when you're on a 30-game run, and then 31, we're 100 days, exactly 100 days away from the World Cup, then everybody's out to get you. Everybody's out to shoot you down and try and get that record. And so at least it's gone, it's out the way, it's not hanging around their neck anymore. And I don't think it's going to be a problem. And I think in warm-ups before big tournaments, lose a few games, it's not a problem and it's nothing to worry about. I still think we're going to...
OK.
Liverpool have said they've lost interest in Jude Bellingham. What do you think's gone on there?
It's price. The thing is, Liverpool need a lot of players. They need a new midfield, they're ageing, and they can either splurge the 100 million on Jude Bellingham and there's not a lot of change left from that, or they can think, well, what we can do is he going to change absolutely everything. Absolutely. Let's talk about Mason Mount, Conor Gallagher, maybe from Chelsea, Alexis McAllister, World Cup winner, for Argentina. At Brighton, and Moses Caicedo is another one. Yuri Tillman at Leicester. So there's a lot of good players around. So I think they've come to the decision, whereas what they used to do, spend a lot of money on one good player. No, we need someone there, we need someone there. Now they know that they need quite a few. They don't have the money just to rebuild the entire team.
Hey, talking about money, OK, Arsenal, top of the league, top of the English Premier League, looking good. Theirs to lose.
Yes.
Their last game of the season is a home match.
That's right.
And the tickets are on sale.
Yeah, they're playing Wolves, 28th of May, and tickets already changing hands for £10,000 a ticket because of the chance that it's the last home game, it's the last game of the season, and that could be when Arsenal lift. They win the title, first one for 19 years, and they lift the trophy. So people want to be there. £10,000. But if they looked at Man City last night, I don't know whether they'll still be thinking, maybe this isn't such a good idea because, I mean, let's face it, prices are only going to go up. If Arsenal keep winning, the demand still... I mean, I remember I don't know if you've had this, I was at a Champions League final and they said... And people are offering like £15,000 for a ticket. So Arsenal are being very careful because they can't allow touts. And also, if you're seen selling your ticket and you've got your season ticket, then you won't be able to renew. You're going to get yourself in trouble. But when people start throwing money around like that... But it all depends whether they're going to get there because it's in Arsenal's
hands. It could be a very expensive week.
It could be a very expensive mistake is what it could be. Absolutely. Can you imagine, though, you spent 10 grand and then you know that Man City look like they're going to win the title and you're thinking, well, there you go. Gamble.
Let's change to basketball.
Yes.
And there's this film out at the minute this air with Matt Damon and Ben Affleck. And there was an auction last night which is related to this film.
Yeah, well... It's about Michael Jordan, and we've spoken about sports memorabilia before, haven't we? And this is a pair of his shoes, $2.2 million for a pair of Michael. There they are, look at that. They could have split them if they'd sold them separately. I don't know whether you could do that. The left boot for $1 million and maybe the other one. Yeah. But they were worn in 1998, and it was the second game of the NBA Finals. And it was the famous Last Dance season, which the Netflix documentary is all about. By the way, see the bottom? I was told, see the bottom of the shoe? Yeah. It's supposed to resemble a cat because Black Cat was his nickname. Oh. So they're supposed to be like cat's paws. But anyway, there you go. I don't know, adds a few 100,000 to it. But 2.2.
Oh, yes.
There you go. Look at that. That's his shoe on the right. So £2.2 million signed by Michael Jordan. And, see, the thing is, sports memorabilia is just a huge industry because if you remember...
There's a lot of rubbish as well.
But there's some very good stuff. Do you remember when I brought in the coat a year ago?
Oh, yes.
The coat as worn by Konrad Bartelski that I bought from eBay for 30 quid.
Have you sold it?
No, I still haven't sold it yet. But I think we've got a picture of it. This is one of the main pictures of the coat. There it is.
That'll add decent value.
Modelled by Elle Macpherson there, you can see. So there it is. There's the coat. So, 30 quid. And I still had no takers yet.
Oh, shame.
Oh. I've got a pair of Ryan Giggs' boots.
Are they actually his boots, though?
No, they are. No, seriously, I didn't buy them at a hotel.
They're not just like a pair of boots signed.
He gave them to me, right?
Were they dirty?
They've got mud on them. They've got grass on them.
Right.
Yeah. But
have you worn them? Do they fit? Is it like
no? I haven't worn them.
Slipper?
But I was thinking of having a bit of a clear out and maybe selling some memorabilia.
I tell you what. If they're dirty and they still have to... I mean, just a bit of Old Trafford
I've got
turf.
Eric Cantona's Return of the Magnificent Seven shirt after suspension when he scored against Liverpool.
Right, OK.
Yeah.
If you had the boot...
Why are you not excited by that?
See,
and it still had his scent on it, his
perfume. Eamonn, 100% clear that rubbish out. Goodness me. Poor Ruth, you've got a stinking shirt, you've got muddy boots, clogging up the attic.
Yeah, well,
get rid.
Do you not get excited about that? That's really exciting to me.
No.
No,
really?
I think it's exciting.
$2.2 million for a pair of trainers. The world's gone mad.
I'll tell you, the best thing I have is Sir Alex Ferguson, when he used to stand there on the line and shout and do Fergie time and all that sort of thing. He did a lot of chewing, right?
Oh,
so he would spit it out on the ground.
Oh, no, not his chewing gum.
People would run, they'd be like ants all around him.
What's wrong with you men?
They would pick up his chewing gum.
You don't get girls doing
chewing
this
gum,
nonsense.
that has been on before.
Rubbish.
Chewing gum chewed by Sir Alex Ferguson.
And you can get it DNA tested.
Absolutely.
Get all those things done.
Yeah, I tell you, I'd have the gum, I'd have the boots.
You would not.
The Cantona shirt. I've got a Heung-min Son shirt. We'll put that in as well. And you know what? And if you buy all those, then you get the Konrad Bartelski coat for free.
Yeah.
What do you think?
That's a deal.
That's not bad.
This could be a business. This could be from us.
Let's get out of here.
Thank you. Good man. Paul Coit there with the sport and his new business of auctioneering.
Just need a model.
Thank you.
Oh,
no,
thanks.
The model.
I did quite like that coat. Yeah, thank you. Stay with us. We're going to discuss whether the iconic company Tupperware could go out of business.
What?
Discussing that, after all these years, because they've just all these rising interest rates and everything. Anyway, David Mellor and Scarlett Maguire in today's papers in just a moment.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
22 minutes before 9 o'clock, and we go through the newspapers with David Miller and Scarlett Maguire. David, we're going to start talking a lot of old sewage. This is Southern Water, and the disgusting thing about this is in the I newspaper. So there's all these rise and fines about raw sewage that water companies pump into rivers and in the sea and that sort of thing. But the staggering thing about Southern Water is they do it. They've admitted they do it.
But they don't know what they've done.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I was actually looking at this and thinking, this really is ridiculous. I mean, this is by Daniel Capurro, the environment correspondent. Southern Water has admitted it does not know how much raw sewage it is pumping into popular bathing waters along the South Kent coast. And you think, this is just unbelievable. All this concern about the environment, all this concern about waterborne diseases, and yet they can get away shamelessly saying they don't know. Why don't they know?
And they've done it 250 times this year
Yes.
already. I mean, they don't know
means
how
there's
much.
a tolerance of it, which means that although it's you get fined for it, the government are happy to go along with the fines and the water companies are happy to pay them.
Well, you don't get fined very much.
Because, you know, just the awfulness of it, they have to say when an incident has happened, but they don't have to say or even know in each single incident how much stuff emerged.
It seems to me there are increasing headlines about state of our water in this country. The question is the message getting through to Downing Street, and is anything being done about it? And I'm not convinced.
You should just bring somebody out and visit some rivers and whatever. We don't talk about the damage. We talk about sickness, maybe to humans, but what about the death to marine life?
Yes,
and stuff that will not be replaced.
But, I mean, actually, Isabel's right. So last week, Therese Coffey said, yes, you know, this is terrible, but we can't fix it overnight. And you think, no, this has been going on for years, for decades. We're not saying all of a sudden we've noticed it. Last summer, lots of people, you know, all down the South Coast could not go swimming. I mean, families were going to the beach and the water was disgusting. And what has been done in the interim? Nothing, apart from Therese Coffey saying it's going to cost you a lot of money.
Well, I'll tell you one of the first things we should do, and would be easily done, we outlaw wipes. These wipes that block up all the sewage pipes and things. If these are so bad for the environment and so bad for the drainage system, why are they still being produced?
And when you and I were young, an exciting time, many years ago, we never had wipes.
No.
You went through the whole of your childhood without a wipe.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
Absolutely. But it's not, I mean, it's not just the wipes. I mean, it's the sewage that is just being
but this is part of the sewage. This is a big part of it.
But it
and it doesn't dissolve. At least you could argue that the sewage eventually dissolves over time and whatever. But they're a part of the Thames, going down the River Thames in London. There are islands of wipes.
Really?
That just narrow the waterway in the middle. They build out from both sides.
And human feces.
I'm glad I chose.
You've got to get them out.
You guys so involved in anything I've chosen.
Oh, David. Look, let's choose this, Scarlett, this op-ed in The Sun, opinion piece by Jane Moore. This is about nights out being ruined by loud groups on neighbouring tables. She does have a point, but I don't think when you're having a good time, you're worried about other people.
What she's talking about is going to something... I mean, the particular one is The Bodyguard, which is a musical in Manchester. And two women who probably sing about as well as I do, i.e. you do not want to ever hear them, decided to sing along with it. And she said, if you want to sing along with things, there's lots of... You can go to Sound of Music. I mean, there's ABBA... You can sing along with it. But actually, there are lots of musicals, and they're not there so that people can try out their singing. I mean...
But they do it. Come on. While I agree with you up to a point, I think that a lot of these things where you just rerun the big music of certain groups, you expect people to sing along. So, interestingly, the best behaved, and I'm opera critic of the Mail on Sunday, not that people get too excited about opera, but, I go to a lot of live things where the audience were best behaved was when I took my granddaughter to Frozen for her birthday, and the kids were in trance and they only jumped around when they were asked to do so.
Right, and all of them, all of them will know, as I know from small children, all of them will know every word to every song.
Every word.
Right, and
they even dress up in the gear.
Yeah, and that's all they're saying. It's something like The Bodyguard is a musical, right? It's like, I really want to go to Guys and Dolls, which is on at the Bridge, and I do not expect the audience to be singing along to
I understand that, but I do think I think Alison Hammond commented about this, didn't she? And there was a huge backlash against her. And I do think of all the things to get your knickers in a twist about, I do think it's been blown out of all proportion.
No, I think there's an etiquette. I think there's an etiquette. And I have seen Guys and Dolls on stage on the South Bank here.
Me too.
And I would not expect people to sing, you know, da 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 da. You know.
Yeah, no, I agree that's etiquette. But what I'm saying is, I don't think the pile-on to Alison Hammond was necessarily very fair. And I think, you know, I don't understand why people have to be so unkind in a public...
What are people saying? They want to sing along?
Well, no, they were just saying that she was disrespectful to musicians and stuff for saying she loves having a sing-along. And now she said, I've thought about it and I understand my position. But she had to make a public statement and she was really upset about it. And there was a huge pile-on. And I just think that's just as indicative of how we're intolerant of anyone's...
But that's Twitter. I mean,
yeah,
you know,
but it was a big storm.
Twitter is completely intolerant about anything. And if you disagree, people are really horrible.
But what there is, and I think
it.
what David is alluding to, is that there are increasing productions which part of the experience is to sing along.
Even if they tell you shouldn't.
Yeah, yeah. Let's talk about Tupperware,
like
which
Jersey Boys, which I've seen 7 times.
Gosh,
And I always sing along.
Right. There we go.
Because the 4 seasons were my era.
Yeah. I've seen Frankie Valli in concert.
Yeah, I've actually I presented him once with a Lifetime Achievement Award.
Gosh.
He didn't give me one, but I gave him a Lifetime
So much life left to live, David.
Absolutely, David. You're just a young thing.
Yeah.
I remember Grease, the theme music to the movie Grease. He only got that because someone else turned it down. I forget who turned it down. I must look that up. But it's funny how life could have been.
But I tell you something, you meet someone like Frankie Valli, who was a good age, and he puts his success down to discipline, not drinking too much. He's alive when a lot of the others are not, because he took care of himself. And he's still out there, 80-odd, he's still doing these shows.
Still doing them.
And Keith Richard, who's probably taken
no care.
more drugs than most of Britain to put together, is still alive.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just luck.
Tupperware, how long will it be alive for? I talk about this, I mean, I'm sure there are other type of products on the market which are similar, but I have an irritation at the moment that my wife packs my lunch with glass cases at the minute, which are heavy, and they're not Tupperware, and all I want is Tupperware in there and not this glass container.
I think Tupperware, we are coming to the end of Tupperware. They're desperate for more money to invest, and the money just isn't coming up. And I was wondering... Obviously, you've never had takeaways, because I have a whole cupboard full of plastic things. That's what I use.
No, unfortunately, I have many, many takeaways. I'm the sort that I phone and they know my name straight away. Oh, Mr. Holmes, yes, we'll get you that. But
don't you keep the containers?
No, but what I'm saying, well, I don't make the foods, you know. But anyway, the thing is, I get these glass-heavy containers, useless. I don't know what she puts them in my lunchbox for. But we'll go for the Chinese takeaway.
Yeah, that's what and I heat things up in the microwave in them.
But what is
great? And I was just wondering if that was the reason. Now,
the Tupperware party phenomenon reached the UK in 1960 when the first event was held in Weybridge, Surrey.
Goodness me!
Yeah,
just down the road from you.
Yes, and I'm just saying the business model for that was then repeated by various sex companies. Who would repeat the party? It's true.
No, but actually...
They would repeat the selling parties by using sex items.
No, but Eamonn, before Tupperware parties, they began because nobody knew how to use Tupperware, and so they were not going in the shops. And a cosmetics woman said, look, I use Tupperware for my cosmetics. And she started the Tupperware parties.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I could never understand. I remember in the 60s getting Tupperware, right? My mum getting it, whatever. And the first thing we did was decant our cornflakes into Tupperware containers. But I'm thinking, why? Why don't you just keep the cornflakes in the cornflakes
because it's airtight. Whereas if it's in the box...
But have you ever had steel cornflakes? I've never had steel cornflakes.
Yes, I have. But that's what the Queen does to make sure that her cornflakes don't go off. I mean, don't you remember when it all came out that the Queen used the Queen used Tupperware a lot, right, for economies. Yeah,
and you know,
right. We've got
these plastic things.
We're going to talk about marriage.
We've got to talk about marriage.
Yes, I'm afraid so.
Yeah, we're going to forget these headlines and we're going to talk about marriage now.
David and Scarlett, thank you both.
Were you two married young? We're going to need you to get out because we need to get the guest in. So bye-bye, guys.
Right, we will do, Billy.
Lovely talking to you. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Not as young as you.
Right.
Thank you very much. No, hold on.
Oh, hold my horses.
Hold on, yes.
Right.
Get the guest in, please, now. Thank you. we're now talking about marriage and when is it too young to get married or too old to get married? And we're doing this on the basis of this lady. You just sit here.
Tina Wilson.
It's lovely to see you. Thank you very much indeed.
She's a relationship expert and founder of the dating app Wingman. And you've been trapped, David, so don't try and run
off
away.
you go. Bye-bye. It's okay. It's okay. You can go. Thanks very much, mate. Thank you.
Just as well, I think.
Thank you very much. So your dating website now is age a factor in what you do? I mean, what age, Tina, are people roughly getting hooked up on your website?
So generally, I would say the single age goes from kind of 25 to 35 because it's not a hookup app. It's more about relationships. So the real under 25s who are looking for something more casual, it's not really for them.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So this is for life, 25 to 35, people finding their life partners.
Who knows? I mean, it's helping them to explore.
Yeah. Would you have a theory, Tina, as to when it's right to do that?
It's really a personal decision. I feel like it's when you meet your person, and if you are ready for marriage, I think that's the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I feel as though the world's changed so much. I think of my parents got married at 21. I think of myself at 21, who I was with at the time, and it horrifies me to imagine that I could have been stuck with them.
I'm sure he'll be delighted. He'll be delighted to
I'm
hear
sure
that
it will.
today.
He's fine. But Millie Bobby Brown and Jake Bon Jovi...
She's 19.
They're 19. That seems
No. Oh, no. So
he's 20.
No, and she's more like a 35-year-old. That's it. So she's 19, and you reckon he's young
20.
as well? 20. Right. But they reckon that she's advanced for her age.
I don't know. Didn't know that. What's that mean?
Yeah, well, it means that she acts more like a 35-year-old than a 19.
I mean, she has had a decade of experience that most 19-year-olds would not have had. I mean, she's a global superstar. She's a UNICEF global ambassador at 19. So I think when people were commenting, it's because they're comparing themselves when they were 19. Yes. But she's a completely different kind of...
I am genuinely of the opinion when you fall in love, it doesn't matter if you're 16, 36, 46, 66, whatever, that if it's right for you and it feels right for you, then I'm OK with that.
I totally agree.
Mm-hmm.
I think you have as much chance of meeting your life partner at 19 or if you're 50.
Yeah.
It's like...
Do you think?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you could probably find someone compatible at any stage in life, but I do think there's more people taken at the age of 50, so you have a smaller pool to fish in.
Oh, but they're second time around or third time around or whatever.
Yeah, but they're not all... You know,
and they've had experience.
When you're sort of 20, everybody's single, so everybody's an option. When you get to 50, nobody's an option apart from the odd sort of...
Well, I think there'd be more options than you may
really?
Think that there would be. But I think you're entitled for it to go wrong. If you get married at 19 and you separate at 39...
How old were you when you first got married?
Well, I married my first girlfriend, the first girl that I kissed, so I was 16 when I kissed her. Aww. So I kissed her on the cheek, didn't even kiss her on the lips.
My gosh.
What good old-fashioned Irishman.
Kissed her, got to marry her now. And that was it.
There you go.
You know?
3 babies later.
Yeah, 3 babies later.
Yeah. But that was too young.
No, I do. I'm also believe. What am I sitting talking about? You're the expert. But I believe that we grow through different experiences professionally, personally, and whatever. So you can be 19, but at 30, you're a different person.
Completely.
Or 45, you're a different person. You know, there are stages, and therefore I have this belief that relationships should be like cars. You should be able to trade them in. You should be able to trade them in with nobody falling out. And you think we've had 15 fantastic years. There we go.
Well, people do. That's called divorce. People do that.
Yeah, but it's usually acrimonious. That's what I'm trying to say. And it shouldn't be. But just generally, we're talking about this girl Millie and her other half. They're 20. They're going to get married. Your view on that?
I mean, look at Hailey Bieber and Justin Bieber. People were complaining, saying they were too young. She was just 20 when she got married.
And how old is she now?
I think she's 24 now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
whole 4 years.
But you know what?
I thought you were going to say she's 30 now.
These type of superstars, they grow up so young.
Yeah.
Their life experience is something that most people will never experience. They travel extensively. They meet a slew of people that make them who they are. And as soon as they feel ready and they meet their match, they go for it.
Are you taken, Tina?
I'm taken but not married.
OK, there's always hope. There we are. Tina Wilson is a relationship expert and she's founder of the dating app Wingman. Thank you. Lovely talking to you.
Thank you.
I wish we had longer, but it's going to be an interesting day weather-wise. Let's have a look.
Hello there, very good morning to you. I'm Jonathan Vautry here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. We have a very windy day ahead of us, particularly if you are in western southern areas of the UK, all due to the squeeze around this area of low pressure that's going to be dominating our weather throughout Wednesday, particularly southern coastal areas of England up into southwest Wales and then Northern Ireland as well. We have the potential for 40, 50 mile an hour gusts inland, but 60 mile an hour plus along some coastal areas. That is enough to cause some travel disruption, particularly to ferries, and we could see some large waves around those coasts as well. We'll be accompanied by some quite heavy rain, at times perhaps wintry over the higher grounds of Eryri and the Pennines. Slightly drier further to the east and the north, but certainly still the risk of some showers throughout the day. Temperatures quite disappointing, around 7 to 10 degrees Celsius. Add on the strength of that wind, is going to feel more like 2 or 4 degrees if you step outside. Into this evening, continuing to see those showery outbreaks of rain. Might ease off a bit more into Wales, southwestern areas of England as we move into the second half of the night, but still quite breezy here. The rain persisting across the north, particularly Argyll and Bute, down into the Scottish borders and northern areas of England. Underneath some of those clearer intervals, we could see temperatures drop down towards 2-4 degrees Celsius, but with the breeze around, that will reduce the risk of frost for all of us. Some brightness early on Thursday for Wales, central southern areas of England, and the winds will also be easing down here a bit more as well. Still will feel slightly cold, but hopefully slightly better compared to Wednesday at least. The showers persisting in the north, and it will remain quite blustery across Northern Ireland, southern areas of Scotland and northern England. Temperatures again hovering around 10, maybe now 12, 13 degrees Celsius in the south. Remaining quite unsettled as we head into Friday as well, perhaps drying off a bit more, particularly in the south and east for Saturday, and we'll also see those temperatures climbing back up towards 16 degrees. Bye-bye.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News, we're starting the conversation and having the debate that the establishment won't have. No one will be cancelled. Join me at 4 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday. We'll be discussing all the big topics of the weekend.
Oh, get cracking!
Always honest, always fun. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit off.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions are, those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today. Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
President Biden promises to keep the peace as he touches down in Belfast.
Hello there, very good morning to you. The time, 9 o'clock, Wednesday, 12th of April. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. The US president has pledged to make sure the Good Friday Agreement and the Windsor Framework stay in place as he prepares for historic talks today aimed at restoring power sharing.
Last night he was met on the steps of Air Force One by the Prime Minister ahead of a bilateral meeting between the two leaders today.
The Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, is in Washington to meet with world leaders in a bid to avoid a new global financial crisis. It comes as the IMF has forecast the UK will be the worst performing G7 economy this year. Downing Street's ruled out talks with junior doctors unless they drop their calls for a 35% pay rise, calling the demand unreasonable. It comes amid reports that the co-chair of the British Medical Association is on holiday while the walkouts are taking place.
And the King's coronation plans are reportedly in chaos due to a string of last-minute problems. With just over 3 weeks until the ceremony, insiders say that amongst the issues that are problematic are an unfinished seating plan because Harry and Meghan have not confirmed their attendance.
And you've got half an hour to get your thoughts in this morning. We love to hear from you throughout the programme. You can tweet us or you can email gbviews@gbnews.uk. The US president has vowed to keep the peace as he touches down in Belfast ahead of a day of diplomatic talks.
Well, he was greeted last night on the steps of Air Force One by the PM, who he will hold a meeting with later today.
And the president will also visit the University of Ulster to deliver a short speech before then heading to the Republic of Ireland. Well, let's speak to the Shadow Secretary of State for Business and Industrial Strategy, Jonathan Reynolds. Good morning to you, Mr Reynolds. Look, first of all, a few thoughts from you, if you will, on events in Northern Ireland, perhaps a slightly pared-back visit from the President and perhaps heeding the advice of your former leader, Tony Blair, in all of this.
Well, good morning. Yes, lovely to join you from Staley Bridge today rather than College Green for a change. But look, I welcome the President's visit to Northern Ireland. I think the progress made in Northern Ireland that belongs in the main to the people of Northern Ireland themselves and the tremendous things we've seen since the Good Friday Agreement was reached 25 years ago. It is something to cherish. And I think we all want to see power sharing back on track. That can only come from the political actors, the political parties in Northern Ireland themselves. But the President's visit can galvanise that, can bring people together, can show actually the whole of the world, I think, has an interest in seeing the success, the prosperity of Northern Ireland continue. That has got to be welcomed. So it's good to have the President here. The Americans have always been an ally, a supporter in the peace process. Let's hope it perhaps just brings the parties a little bit closer together and we can all look forward to power sharing being back on track.
Why on earth can he only spend a few hours there?
Well, look, I imagine the president has a pretty demanding schedule. I think we should we should welcome his visit. I think sometimes, to be honest, we're a little bit needy when it comes to presidents. We want to read too much into, is the relationship still special? Of course it's special, but look, we should be a self-confident nation.
I'm not interested in whether the relationship is special or not. I'm interested in his interest in Irish affairs and Northern Ireland particularly.
Well, look, I think him coming is a positive thing. Of course, I think everyone would like to see him spend as much time here as is possible. He'll have competing demands on his time, but I think his visit is a positive thing and we should welcome it.
Bill Clinton had competing demands for his time, and the man was integral to everything that went on. He's there again today with his wife, Hillary.
Well, I think you're right. I think Bill Clinton played a significant role. Obviously, many people did, but I think his engagement was always in good faith and serious and substantial to it. But look, let's not compare different presidents from different times. We should welcome the support of our American
It's an anniversary. It's very important to compare them.
But
look, listen, obviously he's got nothing to say on the Northern Irish situation, and truthfully, neither do you. But you do have something to say about the high streets, and I'm being serious about this. It is an important initiative. Your leaders in Great Yarmouth and Norfolk today. It's a terrible situation. You'll know what it's like in Stalybridge, replicated everywhere around the country. How on earth, and I know you're going to blame the Tories, but it could be progression, it could be modern life, it could be new technology, our new shopping habits, all of which contribute to the decline of the high street. How are you going to put it right?
Yeah, that's right, Eamonn. I mean, there are lots of things, and people's shopping habits have changed, online shopping, supermarkets, I get all that. But I do believe supermarkets or high streets have a major role to play. And actually what we want to put forward today is real practical measures that would make a difference. So at the top of that is a change to the business rate system. So we'd raise the threshold for small business rates relief to £25,000 from £15,000. We'd pay for that by increasing what's called the digital services tax, which the bigger online companies pay, to cross-subsidise that. We want to tackle the issue of late payments. So we've talked before about what a significant issue this is. We'd make bigger companies report on how quickly they pay their suppliers, smaller companies, to make sure those inequities are ironed out of the system. We'd use some of the money from the windfall tax the government's got and what we originally put forward to help businesses with that transition to lower carbon forms of energy. So you're not just helping people with their energy bills now, but for the long term too. And we give councils much stronger powers to intervene where you've got boarded up vacant shops that have been vacant for years. The owners aren't interested. Bring them back into use. And of course, as well as tackling crime and antisocial behaviour is a big issue for town centres and high streets themselves. It's a major issue whether people want to open a business in a high street. So this is all part of the answer. And I think these are real practical measures. They respond to those changing habits that you've talked about, but they just also, I think, are a fairer balance of where businesses are taxed, where relief should be applied, and also tackling long-term issues like late payment and boarded up shops and people who aren't interested in using their own premises. And I think they'd make a big difference. And I really hope we'll see the government respond to them. And it's great that Keir is in Great Yarmouth today. You're right to say Stalybridge is another good example of this. I think most people would look around the country and say, high streets need a bit of support, they need a better environment to operate in. And these are practical measures to do that.
What about what's happening in Washington? The IMF putting some pretty alarming figures out there. The UK set to be the worst performing major economy in the G7 this year, according to them. And world leaders have joined them, amongst them Jeremy Hunt, our Chancellor, the Governor of the Bank of England, trying to allay any possible new banking threat. I mean, how concerned should we be about that and a possible global recession?
Yeah, well, those are two incredibly significant issues. So firstly, on that IMF forecast for the UK, I find this incredibly frustrating because there is no doubt the UK is the most poorly performing major economy. And I don't think it has to be that way. I think we've got major things in green hydrogen, offshore wind, financial services, things we could absolutely lead the world on. But we've got to acknowledge at the minute we are missing out. We've seen, particularly in America and now in the European Union, really big, bold initiatives to attract investment to them. We haven't got the same thing, and that's what we want to do. I think there are practical ways to do that. On your very serious question on the banking crisis, look, I think people will be exasperated because they've lived through one banking crisis not too long ago. I don't think we're in the same territory. The situation isn't the same now. What we have seen is a succession of particularly smaller banks be too exposed to rising interest rates, which really is quite worrying. Now, I think there are ways the system is much more robust than it was back in 2008, but we shouldn't be, casual about what we've seen, particularly with Silicon Valley Bank. I think that there's right to be a focus on that concerted action around the world, but it is different to what we saw in the past, and I do believe the issues are resolvable.
Yeah, look, the Chancellor said that one of his issues is to halve inflation by the end of the year, and obviously the Bank of England have their target of 2%. I mean, do you think that's going to happen?
I think inflation has probably peaked. I mean, I do smile when the Chancellor says this, because when inflation hit that record level, that double-digit level, it was all international factors, and the war in Ukraine was a significant factor in there. Now that some of those supply chains have adjusted to that, we are seeing, I think, inflation start to come down in the main. Obviously, now the Chancellor wants personal responsibility for that, so I'm a little bit sceptical about the government's role within there. But I do think inflation will come down. It's important to say, of course, when we talk about it coming down, that's still inflation going up. I mean, that's how inflation works. So the record food prices in particular that people have seen, they're not going to reverse. They're going to go up by a lesser amount. But it still will be an incredibly difficult cost of living crisis for people. And the heart of this, the real solution to this, the British economy's got to work better than it has for the last 13 years at a growth rate of 1.5%, very poor by historical standards for the UK. We've got to see better than that. And that's what the Chancellor is responsible for. His decisions will make a major impact on that. And I'd like to see him focus a bit more on that and maybe look and see what the Americans are doing, what the Europeans are doing, emulate some of that success.
And in the meantime, our high streets, which what we were talking about there, have got to make a living. People have got to pay for their premises. And I just want to know what your leader and what you as a party are promising, and on what timescale, how quickly can you promise to deal with the parking issues, to deal with the lack of independent shops being squeezed out by the big chains, by the Specsavers and the Pizza Expresses and these guys come along, Boots, they come along, they get a high street unit. There's nothing left for the independent people there as well. Greedy landlords. If I hear another opticians that come to me and say, well, we simply can't afford to practice here, Eamonn, because the landlords are just tripling the rent or whatever. So the battle for whatever's left of the high street, how quickly can you turn that around?
Well, I mean, a lot of these changes can be done very quickly. So take that change to business rates, which would specifically assist those smaller independent retailers, because they tend to be in the smaller premises. If you look around a high street like mine, you will see in the main the smaller units are the ones that are occupied because they've got this exemption from business rates if they qualify for it. So that could be done relatively quickly. Tackling late payments to businesses could be done. You require, I think, legislation in Parliament, but as quickly as that could be done, you'd have that change in place. Getting support in terms of the energy bills and energy transitions could be done relatively quickly. And most of all, on things like crime and antisocial behaviour, you clearly need the neighbourhood officers to do that. I mean, our plan is to centralise some of the procurement in police forces, use that saving to put over extra 10,000 more additional neighbourhood officers on the street. Crime and things takes time, but some of those changes to the tax system, to the incentives, they could be done by government very quickly if the political will was there to do that. And all it's about is making sure there's a more competitive environment, just tilting the balance a little bit in favour of the kind of people you're talking about, so we can have the kind of vibrant high streets, which I think everybody wants, but at the minute, it's fair to say we're not getting.
Jonathan, you've got a magnificent energy for it. I hope you can do something. 9,000 banks, 6,000 pubs, 4,000 shops in the past 12 years, all gone out of business. It's a big ask. Thank you very much indeed. We'll monitor Keir Starmer today in Great Yarmouth and see what he has to say. Thank you very much indeed for your input.
Thanks so much. Take care.
Appreciate it.
Well, joining us for more is our Deputy Political Editor, Tom Harwood. And Tom, just focusing on President Biden there and his trip to Northern Ireland.
I don't know why we're focusing on it, because, I was listening to Jonathan Reynolds there. Platitudes from Biden. Biden is not invested in this. Why is he not invested in this?
It's remarkable. There are some big questions over to what time Biden has dedicated to the political elements of this trip.
Dear God, and he's got 3 or 4 more days being a tourist in the Republic of Ireland.
He's going to visit his ancestral ancestral home. He's going to visit at least 3 different locations in the Republic. In the province of Northern Ireland, he's staying for a sum total of 16 hours. He arrived at 9 p.m. last night. About half of that time's asleep. He's meeting Rishi Sunak for coffee at 11 a.m. this morning, and then Rishi Sunak goes home. No press conference. Rishi Sunak is not even sitting there for the speech the short speech that Biden is going to give at Belfast University. But also, we are very unclear about the meetings with Northern Ireland political leaders. Yeah. There hasn't been a clear indication of what this meeting will entail, whether there'll be individual meetings. There's one suggestion that it'll be a simple sort of gathering before the speech at the university.
So Tom, this is what, I was trying to get Jonathan Reynolds to say, really, is this on the basis of the advice that's been given by one of the architects of the Good Friday Agreement, Tony Blair? Is this for some reason that we're not...
Advice?
Well, his advice is that you're not going to make... This is a pretty intractable dilemma. You're not going to come in and make a huge breakthrough and don't expect to be able to do that. And, the Windsor framework obviously can't work without Stormont sitting. All of these factors makes it a bit of a hollowed-out trip.
It was interesting listening to Tony Blair yesterday because it was a very different situation in the late 90s. To some extent, it was more the nationalists that needed to be brought into the tent, which the Americans tend to be able to speak better to. Now it's the unionists that need to be brought into the tent, and to some extent, would Mr. Biden be the best messenger there? Perhaps not. So perhaps there is a logic here for Biden making this more of a touristy jaunt than some serious work. But we must remember, this is the 4th time Biden has been in the United Kingdom in his presidency. Yes, it's a short 16 hours this time, but he has spent a considerable amount of time over the last 2.5 years.
Won't be at the coronation, though. Still can't get over that. All right, Tom Harwood, thanks very much indeed. What's to the point? It's coming up at 9:30.
Andrew Pearce, Dawn Neeson today doing that. Well, what have you got, guys? What have you got?
Well, we're going to be talking about the junior doctors leader who, during the strike, has gone on holiday for a whole week.
We might not be talking about it because we might be going on holiday right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we're not needed, are we, really? Nothing important to do.
They're whinging about Steve Bartley, the Health Secretary, not being there to talk. Well, he's not there to talk either, is it? A really bad political own goal.
But we're not going on holiday with the cross-channel ferry.
No.
Right, tell us about this.
It'll be because they tend to get turned around and diverted to pick up the boat migrants that we paid millions of pounds to the French to stop. And the French are now telling us to pick them up.
French warship making a cross-channel ferry change direction to pick up 2 migrant boats. What are we paying all that money for?
And finally, we're going a bit Harry Potty.
All right.
Well, who has gone Harry Potty this morning? We shall find out.
Daniel Radcliffe.
Daniel Radcliffe.
We're just giving it away.
No, we're not. No. There's plenty more to talk about it.
Don't give it away.
Can't get the staff, Isabel. What can I say?
I look forward to it. Thanks.
Thank you both very much indeed. The Strictly stars and real-life couple, Nadia Bichkova and Kai Widrington. We'll be talking to them to hear about their brand new dance spectacular after this.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Can you dance?
I can, but not like these guys.
You say you can dance.
You've seen me dance.
I've seen this one. I'm saying.
Oh, no.
You believe me. You see, when I watch you dance, you're under the influence of alcohol. Therefore, you can't remember. You can't remember what you're.
You're talking about at Naz's wedding.
Yeah.
I remember every minute. I just let myself relax.
And you think that was good. But no. you were dancing on your own quite a lot.
I love dancing on my own. That's my favourite way to dance. I don't like being inhibited by having to follow routines.
That could be a new TV show.
Yeah, dancing on your own.
Only come dancing on your own.
Oh, well, that wouldn't work with these guys, would it?
Strictly Come Dancing professionals and real-life couple Nadia Bichkova and Kai Widrington have hit the road for a UK tour. And it's called, guys, what's it called?
Once Upon a Time.
Once Upon a Time. And that sounds dreamy, Kai. That sounds... I mean, what are you trying to evoke with the performances that you guys will be doing on stage?
Well, for us, obviously, like you mentioned, we are a couple together off stage as well as on stage. So for us, it felt fitting to... it's our first chapter of our story together, so it felt quite fitting, and it can lead on to other shows potentially in the future as well. But for us, this is like a dream come true. I remember watching Strictly as a kid when it first started back in 2004, and now to be on it and now being able to do an amazing show like this and be given the opportunity, it does feel like a dream come true. So it kind of fits in with that dreamy title.
The show, it tells our stories first separately about how we were brought up and how our careers started, and then obviously competition. So the whole show is about our stories separately, and then how we came together, being from completely different sides of the world, and then dance brought us together. So it is magical.
Oh, well, I know we want to talk about your Ukrainian heritage in a moment, Nadia, but I wanted to ask Kai, first of all, because I believe you were a backing dancer when Nadia was still, you know, was one of the main performers in the show. I mean, did you fall in love with her watching her dance? And is it a dream come true for you?
I fall in love with her. I fall in love with her.
Well,
my wife has banned me. She says, you're not, if you go on Strictly, you're not dancing with Nadia.
Well, that's all right. She's taken. She's taken. Kai got in there. But do you feel like the cat that's got the cream, I suppose, is my question?
Well, listen, that was many years ago. It was when Nadia first joined the show, and there was a dance where, you know, they introduced the new professionals, and I was like, you know, not on Strictly at that time, so I was like a backing dancer. I remember looking at her thinking, oh my gosh, she's absolutely gorgeous. Now, fast forward a few years into the future, and then, you know, we ended up meeting and hitting it off. So, yeah, it turned out all right in the end.
Yeah,
all right.
You could say, just all right. Hey. Okay, well, Nadia, tell us a little bit about, because you talked there about how you come from different parts of the world, and obviously, you know, over the last year or so, we talk a lot about Ukraine. I believe your father and your grandmother are in Luhansk or that area in Ukraine still. That must be so difficult.
It is very difficult, and obviously in that part the war started long ago in 2014, so in the worst possible way we kind of got used to it. And what is difficult being away now, because it used to be you got on a plane in 2 hours and you're there, whatever you need, and now it takes 3 days to get in there, and you never know what can happen on the way. My mom's traveling more often to see grandmother and to make sure she's okay, but it's just, I still can't believe that this is all happening.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't stop. I think first I couldn't believe it will happen, and then when it happened I thought, well, maybe last for a week or two, but here we are, longer than a year in, and it's still going on. I'm trying to get my grandmother here, but it's difficult because she's older. She's like, well, that is my home, I don't want to leave, but at the same time I'm so worried for her. If anything can happen, if anything will happen, there's not much I can do straight away. It'll take me 3 days to get there. So, yeah, but we are meeting, hopefully, if everything is okay, after the tour with my father, who I didn't see for quite a long time now, and my grandmother, so it's going to be exciting. And they will see Mila as well, and my mum, so it will be a little family reunion.
Well, look, in the meantime, continue to spread your magic. This is your first headline tour. It's a stunning show. The guys this week are in Buxton, Shrewsbury, Manchester on Friday, and then you'll tour, Kai, elsewhere in the year, will you?
Yeah, so we're also going to London. We're going to be in the West End on the April 29th, and then we finish up in the beginning of May in Dartford. But yeah, we're just having the best time at the moment, so it's a lot of fun.
Brilliant.
Thank you very much. Your dad's a football manager, isn't he?
He is. He's the manager of Aldershot Town now. Yeah.
All right.
Amazing. Very good. Well, look, listen, continue to spread your magic, you two, and the joy. You're a beautiful act to watch, both of you. Very graceful, very, very lovely. They are the equivalent on the dance floor of you and me.
Are they?
On
take that.
And see,
that.
We like dance around the news.
Yeah.
You know what's
we do our tangoing.
Nadia, you noticing how natural my rhythm is? Can you sort of see this?
It is very natural.
It's all there.
Absolutely.
There's certain bits that don't work, but I'll tell you about that.
Yeah.
That's it.
And he was insulting my dancing. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. Guys, every success with what you're doing. It's been a delight talking to both of you. Thank you very much indeed.
Right, that's it from us. We'll be back bright and early from 6 o'clock.
You ever seen Andrew Pearce dance?
I reckon he's got some moves.
He's got some
moves.
There's no doubt. He's always got shiny shoes.
I reckon Dawn's got some moves as well, I've got to be honest. In fact, yeah, she looks a bit like Nadia.
They will be dancing round to the point next. See you in the morning.
Oh, very good.
Well, it's 9:30. Welcome to The Point with me, Andrew Pearce, and Dawn Neeson, and we will be doing a bit of dancing.
We are. We've just had a quick spin around the floor where those were talking. And talking of love stories, well, coming up, we've got loads of really good stuff.
Doctor strike. The doctor's leader is on holiday in Greece.
Yeah, and who's gone Harry Potty? Find out after this break.